Main camera.
There we are.
And bam.
With any luck at all, the world can hear us.
And bam.
With any luck at all, the world can hear us.
And bam.
Those of you in the chat, acknowledge that you can hear us if you want to. Just so we know what's working and what's not quite ready yet.
Just type in, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. Check will work.
Thank you, Ted Eby.
I'm curious if the words coming out of my mouth
Hey,
match
Kevin.
the movement my mouth is making.
Who's this Dean guy? I don't know him.
All
Hear
right.
you from Southern Cal. Good to see you in Southern Cal.
Awesome.
You know, I would bet, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here, that the weather is better in Southern Cal than it is right here today.
That's the awful people in. I don't know. I doubt seriously if they're having good weather.
It was better this morning when I woke up. It was -2.
-2. That was 7 degrees warmer than it was here.
Yeah, it was -3 at my place.
Which is a little weird thing with me. Sorry,
probably
this is
got
just
up before
completely
you.
aside. I have no idea what it means that when we're giving back degrees, it's -2, which means I'm giving 2 degrees. I don't understand how that works.
That means you gave up some time ago, and now it's just a matter of how cold are you going to get.
So, guys, thanks for coming out early. And as you know, we're working on a new system today. Please, at this point, if you've got any questions, any comments, anything that is suggested, comment, we will address anything that you have.
And you'll keep us from getting bored stiff.
And stop hearing the question on temperatures in Chicago.
Yeah, ready for questions.
I've been here all day without one single text. The minute the video starts, I get a text.
That work?
Yep.
Whew. That was somebody from the video saying what a wonderful job you're doing, right?
Oh, yeah. They said, where's that other guy? What's his name? I said, he didn't want to be on camera.
Yeah, well, he'll be. So.
Yeah. The old what's his name? See, my wife thought I was just referring to her when I always said that.
Yeah, well, that was most of the time.
The other old what's her name? The old ball and chain.
Jeez.
First
Joining in
live.
from South Jersey. Hello, South Jersey. Hi, Connie. I recognize Connie. My mother lives in Wisconsin.
You're doing really well. You can see that. I had to squint a little bit.
Well,
So Ike says that his mother's in Wisconsin. She was complaining yesterday that the temperature was -11, and he had to describe that he was at a balmy 77, unfortunately.
That would be rough. I was in the shop yesterday. It was a big whopping 52 degrees.
Yeah.
It was cold
Oh my gosh.
in the shop.
for those of you who order from us regularly and don't think about it because you're in Southern California, when you order things like cactus juice and the ambient temperature in Wisconsin is -11, the chances that we're going to ship it that day are remote, unless you wanted to see what it would be like after it froze and broke the bottle. So if you're waiting for anything and you say, gee, I wonder why it's taking so long, it's possible that it's liquid that we are not shipping out because we prefer to have you get it in a bottle that's not already split. So I know most people don't think about that. And honestly, we've never had it happen. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say something completely off the.
In the time that we've had exotic blanks, Dawn and I have developed more and more things that we're aware of. And that's one of the things that when it gets ridiculously cold, we just try to hold on to things that might freeze.
So 10 EB says, when are we going to see a video on cigar pens? And I know that it's Dawn's, unless I said something I don't, is that an inside joke?
I don't know.
Okay. So unless it's something so Dawn has had conversations with us about actually starting to film, instead of picking that up on one of these, that we would actually film them and put them up on the website. So, and if you don't mind, You want to write that down as a note, and I can
Well,
maybe make that one of my first ones.
the fact that I'm going to be doing it in about 10 minutes probably has something.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, the video on cigar pens, the tonight's presentation is going to be 3 different pens and 3 different media. And I will be doing the cigar pen in wood. Once we're done with this tonight, the presentation, I know that I run over and I know that I don't stay on task. So I videoed making the cigar pen. Now this has no voiceover. That will be me tonight, but I will take that and put a voiceover on it and put it up on Exotic's YouTube to show how to do the cigar pen. So answer to your question is extremely soon. How's that?
Bob asks, Ed, have Sierra Kits almost disappeared off your website?
Yeah, Sierra Kits have almost disappeared. We are going to be going to many of our own designs and so forth. There's some question as to how much we're going to be continuing with Berea. Their kits are fine, but it's difficult for us to get what we want, and their pricing is not any longer consistent with what I like. So yes, there will be some changes, and yes, part of it will be probably discontinuing Berea.
Terry asks, can you hear me? Do you want to explain the new format?
Sure. Terry, the way that we're doing it now is going to be on YouTube. And to be honest with you, we can see everything you say.
Everything you type.
Everything you type, that's correct. And there are some advantages to this. If you look on your screen, in the lower left-hand corner, you will see what you said, can you hear me? One of the things with the old format, the Zoom format, is that we really can't see or hear what you're saying. In this format, in the YouTube format, we can, with Dean's help, he can put that up and everybody can see it. So we hope that it's going to make things even more interactive. We've been trying to be interactive to begin with, but we hope what this will do. Oh, Dawn's on camera. I
Bet she
wonder if she
doesn't
knows
even
that.
know it. Does Dawn know she's on camera?
No, she's on camera.
Oh no, no, she's not.
She's not.
Oh,
okay.
only on a-
Okay, only on our feed.
So back to Terry. I'm sorry. We have a distraction locally. So yeah, when you talk to us now, it goes up in the lower left-hand corner, and everybody can see it. What you say is obvious to everyone. So what we're hoping that will do is give us more interactivity, because all 3 of us see it, and it gives us a chance to answer you spontaneously instead of having the format before where Dean was excellent at getting the information, but sometimes it didn't mesh into what we were doing. Now each of us can make a determination as we see what you're asking as to whether it's a good time to answer that or not. You will still get answers to your questions. We guarantee that we will get to everybody. But this way, we've got all 3 of us.
Record it on our end, or you do it on yours?
I think this is fixed now. I think I'm gonna go talk.
About recording? We start
The recording's
recording?
automatic. With
Oh,
YouTube.
it's automatic.
This is already all recorded.
All right.
Okay, so more than you wanted to know about that. Let's see what else we've got up there.
So Bill Miller asks, how about a demo in the future on making closed-end pens? And Terry says, thank you.
Yes, Bill. We have done one in the past on closed-end pens, but I'm also working on some stuff that ties it. This is going to be a commercial. For those of you who don't like commercials, tune out. I have come out with what we're calling the C series
Yes,
of
we can,
pens.
Dean.
The C series of pens is supposed to mean that it's compatible. That is to say, all the parts from one side of the pen are compatible with other ones. All the platings are compatible. All the threading is compatible. And I've designed a set of bushings that makes it possible for you to turn it into a, quote, kitless, unquote, pen, which will have metal parts for your fountain pen. So essentially what it is an opportunity to take a whole bunch of different components like you used to do. Go back to when I started playing in this game, 1995. First, at that time, there was nothing other than the slimline. But when the two-part pens came out, the roller balls came out, at that time, you could take the fountain pen front end from a roller ball, Junior Gent, Junior Emperor. As time went on, the Retro, there were a bunch of different pen kits that you could change parts back and forth in. Well, the advantage to that was that when we went to shows, if the customer came up and saw a pen that was perhaps a roller ball and said, I would buy that if it was a fountain pen, I could say to them, come back in 15 minutes and it will be. I could do it on the fly, and if I was waiting for them to see it, I would have done that. But instead, I would go behind my display, switch out the fountain pen to the rollerball, and bingo, I had what they wanted. Now, subsequently, too many different kinds of pens have come out, and many of them, the threading is not the same. So you can't do that anymore. Well, I like that. So that's where we're headed with the C series. And that will also mean that it will be compatible with closed end pens and what we used to call double closed end, which means that both ends of it have no hardware on it. When you close the pen, what you see is what everybody is promoting now as kitless, or similar to any other commercially made pen. Both ends are closed. There's nothing there. And then there are a lot of different ways you can put clips on it as well. And so with the help of John and Mark showing other pens that we'll be developing, you'll see how you can take these clips and put them in and incorporate them without having to design your own clip. So it's a lot of things that I'm working on right now. The C series came out, it was supposed to come out sometime at the end of last summer, but it didn't. So when it did come out, the reason that there was so few choices is because I was not at all sure that my measurements were right. So we brought the pen out. It's been out now for 3 or 4 months, and everything works. So now it's a matter of taking everything that works and adding some additional things. I know the measurements are right, so it will continue to get pretty cool. So much for a long answer to a short question.
Well, I will add too, if you don't know anything about the C series, the C series resembles the original Junior Gent, which is why that was one of my favorites. And you used to have to, I would take a piece of oak or maple, drill my holes to be able to hammer these pieces apart, to be able to swap pieces out or build custom center bands and finials. And Ed has designed the C series now that they come apart effortlessly. You don't have to build a jig. You don't have to hammer anything. They all just slide on and off, and it's really easy to customize the pen. So it's a good job.
Thank you.
It works very well. In fact, I spent last weekend at a guy's house showing a couple guys how to make custom center bands on that specific pen.
Cool.
So very simple.
So if I can interrupt here.
Yeah.
So Mark, I know there's another question coming up, but I want the YouTube to do me a favor. Let me know that you hear me. I think I should be able to be audible to you, but I can't check that right away. And if you are listening to me, we've got 40 people watching, which is fabulous. If we could get people to hit that thumbs up like button, would be fabulous too.
Dean is directing Mark for the moment. So
yes, Dean, we can't hear you. Thank you.
Actually, you can always hear me. The YouTube may or may not.
Just accepted my first show on the same weekend. I don't want a refund. 2 questions.
So I'll take care of that one. So I hope I don't mess up the name. But I see that you can't make the MPG, and it looks like you signed up. You have 2 options, right? You can ask and send a refund request if you wanted a refund request. And I have absolutely no problem doing it because we're more than 30 days out. Send it to mpginfo@yahoo.com, or if you go on the MPG site, you can find it in the ask us a question, and that email address will be there. If you want to take the other path, I have absolutely no problem of taking that and rolling it in. And if you get it, either everybody's going to get, as you know, there will be a door prize for you. And if you want that door prize instead, please just send it to me. Send me how we would contact you. same way. Let me know which way you want to go, and we will put your name in for the door prize. Who knows? You could win a couple $100 door prize also. So whichever way you want to do it, please understand we're here to do whatever you want. And just send a communication through, I think it's mpginfo@yahoo.com. It's whatever on their website, on our website, and we will do whatever it makes to help you.
We're a tough group to work with,
Yeah.
And
particularly this far out.
you will have the C series at the MPG, correct?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And we are approaching on we're coming close to about 200 already at the MPG. So I would expect that we'll get back to the 250 to 300 range, which we normally run right around 300. I think we're about right at our current pace. We always get a nice big roll up closer to the event. Greetings from South Carolina.
Hello, David.
And Dean, Ike says that he can hear you when you did talk. Hey, I don't blame you if you're going to do a show. So if
Yeah,
you're going to do a
Mark,
show,
he does all the time.
I knew-
He lives in shows.
starting right after the MPG, basically, it's the third week of April, and then my next weekend off is the third weekend of October. So I'm going to do like 24 shows this year.
Yeah.
And I've already done one. So and we'll do 24, and then we have the time off, and then we do the big one in Chicago at the end of the year, the
One of a kind.
one of a kind show in Chicago.
And we've all done craft shows and art shows many times, and believe me, if you get accepted to a show that you didn't expect to get into, you definitely don't want to tell them to jump in a lake. You won't get accepted again. So good news is you got in. The even better news is when you come back and tell us it was a couple $1,000s an hour, that'll work out just fine. So enjoy the show, and yes, we being Mark will accommodate you any way you can with the MPG. Again, as I say, it's a long way off. So if you call the day before, it's a little inconvenient. But if you're talking about stuff this far out, there's no problem at all with trying to accommodate you. Any other questions? Oh, good. Somebody say something. Special. Oh, now Dean is going to tell us all a little bit about what's going on. We'll have a special drawing during the show, giving away. Can people hear you, Dean?
They can.
Can you do this?
I can do this. So during the show, we're going to have 4 pen
Okay.
kit blank combos that we're going to have. We will be giving them away one at a time. So there's 4 winners that are happening during this, as well as I will be posting links that we will be demoing a Vertex Supreme during this live demo. And we're going to have a thing where you can buy a Vertex Supreme and get a free Ambonia blank.
Dean, say something for just a second. We're having
Yep,
some
no
technical
problem.
difficulties.
So this is awesome. So Piney says that he got his info to find this show based off some information we gave during that last Zoom call.
That's okay. Just let me know if I'm not, so I don't talk over it.
All right, we are coming close. We got about 5 minutes left. Any last questions before we get going? Otherwise, I can start. I will post out some of the links in the very near future, and we will do it. So here we go. Whoops. Kenny B, the Vertex Supreme deal is live right now. The deal in general is going to be you buy a Vertex Supreme, you will get a free Ambonia blank, similar to the ones that John is showing. There'll be a random blank, but there are some very beautiful blanks. I've already seen some of them. You can buy up to 3 and get 3 blanks. Any blanks above those 3 would be purchases, not freebies, but you can buy up to 3 Vertex Supreme kits of any plating and get the blanks with them. I will post the link to both to the Vertex and the blanks in the very near future, and you'll be able to click on them from the chat. It will go through approximately 10 p.m. Central tonight. So it'll go. It's already live. I'll post the blanks the posts in a second, and it'll go through 10 o'clock tonight.
And I can tell you that Mark and I and Dean, we just spent the last 30, 40 minutes
Oh my
going
god.
through the box and
Oh
looking
my
at all
god.
these, and there's not a bad blank in the pack. I mean, they're all just phenomenal. Beautiful wood. So it smells almost as good as it looks. So
3 minutes.
well, and the voice that you hear off the camera is Mark. We'll see if he wants
I'll
to.
move over at some point.
He doesn't want to sit this close to us, apparently. He's off camera, being shy tonight, a little camera shy, but now he just knows I have to squint to read the comments. So.
I'm trying to help. If someone has questions, read them.
Sure.
I can break in
And
as
I
well.
don't do any sound.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm also doing it in like signing and stuff like that. So that, and sometimes they think they're going to steal second base. So sometimes I give them the swing away or bunt sign.
Is that what that signal
Yeah, that was
yeah,
Oh,
that's what that was.
Anybody else have any more
That's something
questions?
else.
Anybody have any questions? Yeah, Mark is shy. Yep, you got it, Bob.
We all know that.
Yeah, that was the nicest thing I could say. Shy. I didn't want to be too mean.
Mark is shy.
I think-
See, we could have a murder on camera here tonight if I wanted to. All I'd have to do to get killed tonight is turn this little camera about 20 degrees to its right.
Yep. I think he's just trying to stand closer to the heater. That's what Mark's doing. He's over there a little closer to the heat source. The studio.
Oh no, you have enough hot air.
I'm trying. I'm doing my best.
You have enough hot air.
The studio, it's not bad. I mean, it's a little cool, but I have a sweatshirt on.
It's crispy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it's very comfortable. It's much warmer than my shop.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's true.
And it's probably about 60 degrees warmer than outside.
That's true too. Sadly.
Oh,
yeah, that's a good comment. So you look up your black sleeve blend into the back. It looks. That's great. I think next time we should all wear black shirts, and we'll just have 3 floating heads.
It's a green screen without the green
Oh.
screen.
The
Okay,
plan
so-
was that it would be more comfortable, and I wouldn't stick out with some other color on me. But you're right. That does have an interesting look, doesn't it?
That is awesome. You can just see floating hands.
I'll keep them on the desk.
Oh wow.
And we're at 6 o'clock. So in that we're at 6 o'clock, how about we get started? Are you okay with that, Dean?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, you look okay with that. So thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. As we've pointed out, we're moving from the Zoom format that we've all been somewhat familiar with to a brand new format on YouTube. And I have to give all the credit to Don and Dean for getting this all figured out and set up. And one of the things that's going to be nice about this is that you'll actually see Dean in the little circle in the corner. So you get to see the whole team from time to time when Mark decides to drop in. But generally speaking, you'll get to see all of us. And we'll see how this works out. One of the things that is different as you put your comments in or your chat in, when it's something that all of us need to see, Dean can put it on the large screen, and everybody gets to see what is being said. Right now, please comment, like, and etc. That way, we get a chance to see it as well, Mark and John and I, and so we can get a chance to answer your questions as they come up without being interrupted as we're trying to put together whatever it is that we're talking about.
Can you
So-
imagine us on a 50-inch screen?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Robert says that he's watching it. He's watching on his 50th screen.
Wow.
I just want him to know I am not that big in real life. I'm a lot slimmer than you'll see on
I
TV.
bet we're probably close to life size on
Yeah.
that
We're
screen
very
there.
close to life size.
Nice.
The purpose of this one tonight, we're going to talk about 3 different pens. I'll tell you that this originated because I was sitting in my office one afternoon and I got a phone call. That's not surprising, but this one was surprising. It came up on the ID as Dick Singh, and I don't get a lot of calls from Dick Singh, so clearly I answered it as quickly as I could. And Dick said, I got an idea for your presentations. Okay, what's that? He said, why don't you talk about making a pen? And I said, well, we pretty much have all done that. And he said, not really. I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, I'll bet if you make a pen and John makes a pen and Mark makes a pen, there will be a number of things that each of you does differently from the others. Well, who knows more about this industry than Dick Singh? So who am I to question the concept? So that's how this started. And we're going to basically, I will make a cigar pen out of wood, followed by Mark making a pen, rollerball out of acrylics. And then finally, we'll always save the best for last. John will come up at the end, and he will do an acrylic resin. I'm sorry, one of his own resins, of course. And the one that he's doing is going to be one of the feather pens, but it is the concept that would translate to anything that you want to do. So that's the schedule for tonight. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about the.
And between each transition, there is a giveaway.
There's a giveaway, and that will be handled by Dean, so I don't have to learn anything about it. I think he's already told you a little bit about about what we're going to be giving away. If not, I'll give John 2 seconds. Tell them what they're going to get, John.
You're going to get a pen kit and a premium Amboina Burrow blank.
And the pen kits are also on special. I'm sorry, the Vertex kit is on special, and that's also something that you'll see in the comments from Dean and so forth. But yes, if you buy the Vertex Supreme, you will get a free Amboina Burrow blank, limit of 3 to each customer. And I think that's everything I need to know about that. If not, Dean will correct me. So
You want to hold these up in front of the camera a little closer? They can see. This is just.
Or do you want to put them in front? You can do that, or do you want to throw them in the front of the close-up?
We can try that. There you go. This is no particular order, just 3 random blanks pulled, and just to give you an idea of the quality of the Amboina that's in the box that you'll receive. So,
she got some stuff that came in from Indonesia, and it is gorgeous. And it's all really, really nice stuff. So as I say, there's a limit of 3, but we're pretty sure we won't run out. So take advantage of it now, and you'll get something that you'll enjoy. And hello, Dick.
I think the blank alone makes the component set free.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
those blanks are clearly a $15 to $20 blank.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those are beautiful blanks,
And
and
additionally, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the fact that you can see exotic blanks at the MPG, of course. You can also see exotic blanks at the AAW, and at the AAW as well this year. You got a chance to see both Mark and John doing demonstrations at the AAW level in Minneapolis. And that will be in June. We suggest that if you get the opportunity to go out there, you certainly will get your money's worth with either one of them. Both of them are doing 2 rotations. It's quite an honor to be called upon by AAW to do a demonstration. And it's really amazing that both of them both from Chicago. I mean, essentially AAW tries to get people from everywhere. But when they look for people in the realm of pen turning and pen casting, they picked John and Mark, and I think that's a big feather in their cap. You want to say something?
Oh no, I'm excited about doing it. I love going out and doing it. If I can say one other thing about the MPG, and I will come in the camera back.
And go.
Sooner or later we can.
So another thing about going to the AAW, I would love for you guys to come over and help me. So my wife and I run an event at the AAW called Learn to Turn. And if you've never turned a pen, most of us will be coming for the demos and the turning demos. The rest of us, you may have a spouse that's coming, your child, your grandson, granddaughter, anybody else who's coming out. They get to come and make a pen. And all you do is you pick up the component set. Ed will be there so you can pick out the component set that you want. And then you come over to our section. Last year, we made over 350 pens with people, and it was a blast. So you'll have people watching over you, helping you do it. You don't have to worry about anything. If you've never made a pen before, it's a great opportunity, and it's just a lot of fun. So if you've never made a pen, or your spouses want to come out, or your kids or grandkids, it's a great opportunity to come out, make a pen. And you'll be making Sierras. We've already got them all tubed up for you. We've got all the blanks glued in. All you're going to be doing is some turning.
All right.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
We ready for the first demo?
So
Hold on, Dean's talking. Ed's headset's not working, Dean. So
Yep. So I just curious, are we ready for tell Ed, let me know when we're ready for the first video demo.
So let them know when we're ready for the first demo. The video.
Oh, okay. Couple of things I want to say real quickly before we start this this video. After I finished the video, I thought of a couple of things that you really, when you're making the cigar pen, there are questions that come up all the time. And I don't know that I addressed them all that carefully. The one advantage to the fact that I'm going to be showing the video is that it keeps me on topic. And it also keeps it to 24 minutes. And that way I know for a fact I won't be running forever. Unfortunately, when I start talking, sometimes I forget how to stop. So here's the things that have come to mind about a cigar pen after I was done with this are a couple of very simple things. First of all, it starts with 2 tubes. And the 2 tubes are not the same length. So if you can switch that to the close-up. Oh, look at there. It's a beautiful job. Oh, thank you. The 2 tubes are not the same length. So when you start the pen, recognize that the bottom tube, the body, the one that's this one is going to be the one that goes into your
the longer tube.
Your longer one goes into the nib. I'm sorry. Longer one goes into the nib, and on the other end, you're going to have that piece, which is your junction to the transmission. So bear in mind, that's the way that they go. That's important. The longer one has to be the bottom one. The other thing that people have a lot of trouble with is there's 4 bushings. And the 4 bushings, that's why Mark is off camera, so he can help me with these things. The 4 bushings are very, well, 2 of them are very close to the same size, 2 are very different size. If you are setting up your bushing layout, this big one is clearly going to be the center band. This is what the pen looks like when it's done. So the big one's going to be the center band. The smallest of all of them is going to be the nib. The second smallest is your cap. And the one that's left is the piece that goes in here, the one that attaches to your transmission. So that answers the questions that come up the most often. So that having been said, now you can start the video if you don't mind, Dean, and we'll move forward. Okay, what we do with any cigar pen, what we do with almost any pen, as you can see, set it up with the block and put a line down the center, then cut it down the center. You will then put it into your scroll chuck, and this one's marked the long one. The drill bit on this is 25/64 or 10 millimeters. You can use either one. What you want from Dick Singh's perspective, and taught me a lot, you advance the bit while the blank is spinning. If you do that, it will center the bit on your blank, and therefore you will start to make your hole down the center. The difficulty that many people run into, they'll tell you that they got one end of it is the one end of the hole. It's a little bit wider than the other end of the hole. Well, that's because you had a wobble. That is to say, you did not hit the center of that blank when you brought your drill bit up. So you avoid that by having it spinning first, and it will seek center and it will go in straight. And if you look at this, you'll see we are marking it to the length of the brass tube, because I did cut the piece longer than you need so that you do not drill all the way through it. Again, this is a technique that you don't have to use, but it will save you the blowout that you sometimes get when it exits the pen blank. So if you bring it in until it just goes up to that mark, you will now know that you have a long enough hole in there. And then you can take that off and take it over to your bandsaw and cut off the part that was left at the end. That way, you don't have to worry about blowing out back ends. As you can see here in just a second, one end is not drilled at all. I take it to the bandsaw, cut that off, and then on both ends, you're going to get a nice clean hole. It's not difficult, but it is something you can see here. The hole is very well centered and it doesn't have any problems. Now you put your tube in it and check to make sure everything fits nicely. It can happen when you're dealing with wood. This is the size that you want for the shorter one. I'll go there first. Do the shorter one, mark the same as we did before, and go ahead and drill the second half, and it works the same as the first half did. You don't have to worry about the thing going in straight as long as you're using the rotation. Now, when you drill a wood blank, if it's extremely dry or bright dry, you won't have it necessarily close in on you. But one of the things that's different about wood is it can close in after you drill the hole. So your 25/64 may not be big enough. And again, if that's the case, you can take a 10 millimeter hole and go through there. There are charts made that show you all the different sizes and what they are in thousandths of an inch. I use those routinely. Anytime I drill a hole, if I don't like that hole, I have the chart. I can look and see what's the next size up. Something you should really have around, because it really can be very helpful a lot of times. I use it often when I'm making pens. So now we've got two holes in there and they're the right size. This is your wax. If you want to use dental wax, you can also use a potato. You can also use kids' Play-Doh, thank you. All those things, anything that'll block that end. You're trying to make sure that when you push that through the hole in your blank, you don't get a whole lot of CA in it or whatever you're using. Now I'm using in this one epoxy. You'll see in a minute that there's epoxy. There it is. Look, it happened. Two-part epoxy. You just make it into epoxy, of course, and then I use that stick to put it into the hole. I actually don't put much on the tube itself. You can do it just in the hole like that, and then put your tube in and go back and forth a whole lot of times. Because I'm using 5-minute epoxy, there's no particular rush. You understand when people talk about it got locked up and didn't go through all the way. Two things will accelerate adhesive, one of which is heat and the other of which is water. So if you have used either water to keep that down, to keep the heat down as you were drilling it, or if you've used any kind of, what am I trying to say? CA or any other stuff. If it's got water or heat, that's where I was going. If it's still hot from drilling it, you will run into a problem with it, can run into a problem with it seizing up. So drill, let it sit long enough to be cool, then take it and put it in like this and turn, twist it a lot, go in and out a lot. Again, you got plenty of time with 5-minute epoxy. So the only thing is you want to try to keep it fairly level at the center band. Notice how beautifully that changed into a pen that's going to be pretty. But you can't see the marks as easily. So this is a full-length mandrel. We're talking about putting it on the mandrel. This is a half-length mandrel, or what they call the pro mandrel, so that you can shorten it for one blank and use 2 bushings. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dean, can I ask you to pause for 1 second? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, he's got a pause.
He paused.
So sorry, I do it a little differently. So this next
Sure.
question is good.
Go ahead.
When you talk about facing,
Mhm.
for me, the biggest thing on cigar pen bottoms are the most sensitive to messing up the facing. I don't know if you were planning on talking about that.
No, I don't
apologize.
face them. So yes, it's a good thing to bring up.
So when you're doing if it's okay to just chat over it,
Sure.
when you're doing the cigar pen in that bottom, that's the most sensitive to that. If you use a barrel trimmer
Mhm.
or any of that, and you're going with that technique to barrel trim it, I find that even a small nick into that tube at all, that the ball point will just
It'll
ball
always
point
be exposed.
will always be exposed.
Yeah.
And that's more sensitive on a cigar pen than anything. Sierras, you have a little play. Even Slimlines, you have plays. All the junior series, you have play. But that cigar kit is, to me, the most frequent thing that people tell me that they have a challenge is that little bit in the end gets exposed. And that's because when they go to do the facing of it, they over trim that thing just a little bit. And they'll go, no, I didn't. But as long as you see a shaving or two coming out of it, you've over trimmed it.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt that.
don't be sorry.
Also, do you scuff your tubes?
No, I don't scuff tubes. First of all, in my opinion, when you buy these things and they come to you in a kit, somebody has already cleaned them. But if there's anything that might be on it, it would be the oil that they use when they are cutting the tubes. So from my point of view, for 15, 20 years that I've done this, I throw them into some acetone and then take them out of the acetone, and in my opinion, they're ready to go. I used to do all my pens with CA. Didn't use anything but CA. And I've heard the argument that it breaks and cracks and takes, you can make it spin and all that. My opinion, again, is that if you use a sharp tool, you won't beat it up and you won't have that problem. People who are having trouble with it breaking free, why are they putting that much pressure on the pen blank? You're supposed to be cutting it, not beating it up. So I don't have any problem with either one of those, although I do agree that I have changed my opinion on epoxy. I will use epoxy 99% of the time because it is a better.
I'm a big fan of epoxy.
Yeah, I know everybody is.
Epoxy and gripping glues.
And
work well.
I'll tell you, the most disappointing thing is I used to do Loctite epoxy
Mhm.
at Home Depot. They stopped that line about a month or two ago. I cannot find that line anymore, and that was my favorite line for epoxies.
Okay.
So thanks for addressing.
No
that.
problem. Anything. Okay. Can we move along then? Thank you, sir. This is the beginning turning of the one side of it. I think this is the body. If I look at those two, we'll see. And generally, I use a skew, and people have told me many times after watching my videos that it looks like it's horizontal. Yes, it looks like it's horizontal. It's not. It is probably off at about 5 degrees because I'm using generally the tip is what I'm doing there is using the absolute tip of the tool and cutting off the two ends. And then after I get the two ends cut off, I will use about the center of that tool to go back and forth and basically cut it. I don't find it difficult to use a skew at all because I've been using it for many, many, many years. But I understand that it takes some time to get used to it. And if you get a catch with a skew, it can be a pain. One of the things about the newer system where you're using, I use turn between center bushings. The bushings that I'm actually using on this pen are the normal bushings. I put them between the two 60-degree centers. Okay, this is the bottom of it. The nib, when we're finished, will be on your right. So, let's say I use this to get it down to the right size, more or less. Essentially, I'm going to be about a 1/16 of an inch larger than it needs to be because it has not been faced. You will see in a minute why I'm doing it that way. First of all, if you face it with wood, it really doesn't make a lot of difference. You can use a pen mill. Pen mills are wonderful when they're sharp. Keeping a pen mill sharp is, in my mind, very difficult. There's a lot of ways to sharpen them, but very few of them are going to give you equal on all of the blades. And if they're not equal, they will bite. And if they bite, they will try to tear your blank apart. So realistically, particularly if you're working with acrylics, and I worked almost completely with acrylics before exotic blanks. So that's what I grew up on. But yeah, as you can see, it's the same situation here. We're just turning it, and basically I use the point of the tool to get it down rather quickly. And one of the things people say, boy, you get a pen done in a hurry. I turn pens. I don't admire them while I'm turning them. If you just keep working at it, you will get the pen made very quickly. If you take a pass and look at how wonderful a job you did, and then take another pass and look again, it takes a lot longer. Once they're down to this level, then I face them. And this is one of the things that I think is different about the way I do it compared to other people. I wait until I don't have much material to remove before I remove the material. If you remove the material at the very beginning, you've got much more to remove and you're going to turn it off eventually anyway. But I'm not opposed to that. I just think this is faster and more accurate for me. You're putting the piece on a post, and that post is those, what am I thinking? Punch, thank you. If you have a punch set that you use to bang your pens apart, that's what's inside that little device. And you should have the one that's the same size as your tube. I don't change them. I just push the thing up against the tube, against the punch, and it will stay perpendicular that way, and it will be a perpendicular when I'm done. Now, in the cigar pen particularly, it probably is right because both of them are the same size. When you have two tubes that are different sizes, I'm not going to take the time to change that punch. So that's all there is to it. You just put it in like that. You sand it flat. When you can hear the tube hitting the sandpaper, you have a pretty good idea that you're there. And as Mark says, we don't want that to be shorter. We're looking at that being the size that it's supposed to be. So when you hear it, don't keep going. That's the time to stop. It's not difficult, and as you can see, if you need to take it off a couple of times, particularly when you haven't done a lot, take it off a couple of times, look at it. If you're not there yet, it takes seconds to get back to where you want to be. So that's how that gets to the right size. In just a second, you'll see how that sanding device is made, in case that's something you want to do. Clearly, I didn't buy that. It's something that I made years ago. And it gets down to it, and it will make it absolutely perpendicular every time. So one of the things that you have to be aware of when you're trying to make pens, that those junctions, if they're not dead flat, will not match up to your components, and your pen will look like it's half done. So be careful. Make sure that you get it good and flat when you put it back into the bushings so that you can turn it the rest of the way. You'll see if it's off. Let's look at this in just a second here. You see that's the sandpaper. It's on a Velcro pad. Put it back on, and you've got a 1-inch nut on the back. It's highly technical. So you can do it. It doesn't cost much, and and they work pretty well. And as you can see, this was a nice piece of wood. One of the reasons that's to show you the size of the two bushings, and that they are now turning absolutely square. You're not going to have to worry about. Prior to this, when it was not faced, they could wobble. If you looked at it while it was turning and you say, wow, that's wobbling. Yeah, it is. So what? I'm going to get to the point of facing it, and when I face it, I'm going to be able to get it square, and it will come out square. The pen will be right. As you can see, if you look at the two sides, they're flush against the bushing. That's important. If you look at that and see that you have a gap between your blank and your bushing, go back and face it again. Because, and by the way, don't take anything off that brass tube. So basically, do what you have to do, but be careful. We're not trying to make this thing any smaller. Again, this is the top of the pen. So you see that it has a kind of an interesting slope at the end. And that's the way I made cigar pens. So you can do them any way you want to. This is 400 grit. And I sand at about 1200 RPM. I like a nice gradual slope at the top. As I say, when I started doing cigar pens, the Mont Blanc was very popular. And so I kind of made my cigar pens so that they would look a little bit like a Mont Blanc. Again, going back to the history of pen making, there were some arguments between the manufacturer of Mont Blanc and the people making pen kits, and so we never referred to it that way, but it was nice to have something that had that kind of a look. People identified that with quality and with high price and so forth. So I tried to make my pens look a little bit like Mont Blanc. And in conversation, I would tell people, it writes just as well as theirs does, except it's half the price. So, but as you can see, this was just 400 grit, and I do that until you look at the piece and it is equally sandpaper sanding across it. In other words, the whole thing is white. When you're done with the sanding, it should look white all the way across. You don't have any high spots. You don't have any low spots. Low spot will turn up looking like a shiny spot. So if you see shiny spots, you aren't done. But that's the 600 grit. And then a piece of towel just to clean off all the sandpaper and all the rest of that. Realize that I'm working with a burl here. So if I don't do that towel, or if I don't do something to clean it off, and then I put a coating over the top of it, I'm going to take the sandpaper that's in any of the cracks and crevices and make it permanent. That will then look like it has not been finished properly. So make sure you clean that off. If you want to, you can use an air compressor, but make sure you clean it off. The next thing you're going to see here is that I realized I was now putting on the thin CA with the bushings in place.
I was just going to
Very short order. You'll see we took the bushings off. We moved the bushings so they don't become permanent parts of your pen. So yeah, be very careful to not do what I just did. Fortunately, they still came off. It was early enough. But and the other thing is, I don't use the plastic bushings or any of that stuff. I just put it on the 60-degree large center and our dead center. Before I made this video, that one on the right-hand side, the dead center, was absolutely caked with CA. Take that, put it into a little bath of acetone for 2-3 minutes, and then take a paper towel and go across it, and it looks like it looks down. It's not difficult to get it off, and that way you don't have to goof around with any other bushings and stuff. Yeah, we sell them, but I don't find them necessary. So what I'm doing here is just a couple of coats of the very, very thin CA, the Glue Boost, and it's the green label, that ultra thin. And then shortly, you'll see that I've switched to the orange label. I recall, first a quick shot of the accelerator. Yes, when I did 2 or 3 of the very thin, it was still drying okay, but I thought it would be a good idea to hit it real quick before I went to the orange label. So every time I do Glue Boost, there's a certain amount of consistency, but it is not the same every time. It's just a matter of when you look at it and say, yeah, that looks pretty good. Then I'll move on to the next one. And as you can see, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, your material will dictate.
Yeah, whatever you're getting, if it's starting to look great, why keep going? So, it's just a matter of looking at it, deciding is that what you wanted.
Your speed will also depend basically on the material you're using when you're sanding. If it's a soft material, you can sand a little more. You don't want to build up the heat.
Right.
But applying your CA, you want to turn your lathe down, and that's so that you don't throw the glue all back at you as you're putting it on there. So I usually apply my glue around 500, 400 or 500, and then I'll sand anywhere between 600 or 700 up to 1200. It all depends on the material.
And I know this will be the most controversial thing you'll hear tonight, especially with this burl. But you know what? I'll tell you, on this burl, going with the Master Tint products with Glue Boost and adding not a big color, add a hint of yellow, add a hint of red, it makes those burls even pop even more. And I know the purists who love burls are going to say that's sacrilegious, but you know what? It differentiates you from the next guy, and adding that hint of yellow, oh my gosh, I love the hint of yellow on these burls.
You're doing that before you put the CA on, correct?
No, I'm actually mixing it into my CA. It's the Master Tint series.
Okay.
And so I'll do it as my first coat. I'll mix my Master Tint into that first coat. And you guys saw the Master Tint series.
That's right.
Just a hint of yellow, hint of orange, hint of any of the colors that are more natural, and you wouldn't believe how it makes that burl pop.
Yep. Yeah, I believe Ed said he was sanding a little higher speed on this one because this isn't a real hard or dense, oily wood. You can sand a little higher without having any problems gumming up the sandpaper or creating too much friction on.
Yeah, I sanded at about 1,000 RPM, and I did do anything with Glue Boost at 500. I agree. I don't need it in my face. So the way that I do Glue Boost is a little different. This is the second shot at it. After I finish the putting it on, I'll let that blank sit for an hour or 2 or 3, and then come back with 600 grit. And optionally, as I say, you can use steel wool if you prefer. But basically, come back and flatten out everything that you put on. And all I'm trying to do here is make it feel good.
You wait that long?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I wait a couple hours.
I will tell you this. So one of the things, just playing off that, if it's okay to just talk, is I do exactly the same thing. I'll do a lot of my turning of my wood blanks, and it's very uncommon that I'm just going to do 1 pen. I'm going to do 4 pens, 5 pens, and so I'll do them. I'll glue boost them, put them up on the shelf. I've got a from sewing. I've got a bobbin rack. I've got a bobbin rack, and I put them in there, and I make sure that I always have my orientation the right way. And then John, that's when I'm letting it dry. So it's drying a little bit more. I don't know that you really need to do it. You can plow through it. But I just find I like it that way.
It all depends on how thick you put it on, and again, your sanding grit for polishing your CA or fine tuning your CA is going to depend on the surface. If it was a pitted surface and he had a lot of voids or cracks to fill with the medium, then he may have to start with a 320 and knock it down smooth before he builds up his orange layers, the thin CA. But if the surface is really smooth, and you like the way it went on, you don't have a lot of material to move, then you can jump in there at 400 or 600 just to smooth it out.
And one other technique is if you're not sure.
Okay, Dean, stop it there if you don't mind, so we go through this and we can do what we need to. Thank you.
It's okay. One of the things, if you're not sure, the other thing, John, is it's not uncommon for me to do 400 wet dry, and then turn the lathe off and go. In this case, you got a burl, so it doesn't matter. But in traditional woods, I'll do that with the grain just a little, very light touch, and then just as you said, I'd go right to my micro mesh at that point.
I'll use the triple aught or the quad aught, extra fine steel
That's
wool,
what I use. Yeah.
and I'll turn the lathe on high. After I'm done sanding it, say up to 400 or 600, depending on the material itself, I'll hit it with that steel wool, and then I can go and get a pretty good visual on whether or not there's anything I need to touch up, fix, or apply any more layers, and it'll let you know whether or not you're ready to micro mesh.
And I think all 3 of our videos available on Exotic Blanks Tool to see how we do the CA finish on there. So if you want to say that.
Yeah, let's see. the Exotic Blanks videos channel. It's now got almost 100 videos up, and I also have incorporated I think all of Mark's 10 minutes better turning, and I've incorporated several videos from John. So anytime you're looking for anything, if you look at our new website even, you can find the videos, and they're listed pretty easily on any page on exotics, but there is an index page. So if you get to the index page, it makes there we go. So if you use the thing that Dean is now feeding you in the chat, that will get you to the how-to videos. And there is one section that's John, and one section that's Mark, and a huge section that's my stuff that I've done for many years. So some of it is pretty old. But Blue Boost, all three of us have one there, and I will tell you the ones that are better are both John's and Mark's. Mine was very, very early, and I'm not all that excited about it. I'll replace
I think it's just kind of interesting. We do it completely differently. I do it with the lathe off. I start with the, everybody starts typically with the, to do it just the opposite. I'll start with the blue, and then I'll go to the orange. Most people will start with the thin to let it soak in. So I love the fact that there's different ways of doing it.
Well, and it's evolving because they've come out with that new green label, and that changed the whole way I did it after I listened to John, actually. So there will be more information about that as it progresses, and some other things that are happening at Blue Boost that'll be out in the next few months.
So David brings up the point that optimum temperature for Glue Boost. I know that when I talk to Rick out there, he always goes anything above 40 degrees. I always think, So for me, it's usually right around that 55 to 60 is minimum. Where I'm at 70, to me in my basement, it's the perfect temperature for me to apply my finish.
I just applied a Glue Boost finish on a pen, and the shop was between 50 and 55 degrees, and it was just fine. I don't usually do that because the shop's too cold to stay in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't had an issue with temperature.
Okay, the last thing that we want to do here is just assemble it. And the reason we want to assemble one is because I get so many questions about it that I thought I'd have to do it. So here it is. First thing I put in is the transmission holder. Realizing that has threads on the end, put it into a hole in your, I use Arbor Press. I know a lot of people are using different methods for this, but I use the Arbor Press, and I have holes in it for all the things that will basically protect the threads. Next goes in the nib, and again, I'm putting that that transmission piece into a hole so I don't push on the threads. You put the spring on the refill, and put the refill into the pen. Go ahead.
If it's okay to interrupt,
Quickly.
Dean, can you pause real quick?
Oh, okay.
If you are not using the Arbor Press and you're using a pen press,
Okay.
Here's one thing that'll save you just tons and tons. Have an extra tube, top tube for a cigar. This is really just the cigar pens that have this issue. And when you're pressing it in, when you're pressing the screw in the top of the bottom, the screw in part, put the brass tube over that. And then when you're using your press to go over it, you can only damage the brass tube that you're putting in.
Good.
It will not affect those threads. I can't tell you, people have told me,
Of course, I've never done it.
which means I have done this, is that, when you press it in, you can damage those threads on there because they are very, very sensitive.
Yep.
So I'll use the top, a brass tube from any other thing that just makes sure that it fits over it, and then I'll press against that, and then that'll push it in perfectly.
One quick comment on that, though. There is a difference among cigar pens. Mark is absolutely right. Protect it all the time. I do protect it all the time these days, and so forth and so on. One Christmas, I wanted to save money, and so I bought a bunch of cigar pens. I bought a lot of cigar pens, 200, 300, 500 at a time. And I bought them from a source that at that time was relatively new out of China. I had been buying them from Berea and Craft Supply and never had a problem. I had a whole lot of pens that I was able to bend every component in it without any trouble at all. So if you're buying absolutely the cheapest pens you can find, be extremely careful because some of them will fold much easier than you might imagine. So that's the last of my preaching.
Well, you know what? One more point on that one, and I want to make it because whenever I teach this and I talk about that all the time, it's almost frustrating for me when people ask about. Well, you see it on YouTube a lot. What's the cheapest Sierra? What's the cheapest Slimline? What's the cheapest whatever? Here's the problem that you have is even if you're really, really good, you're going to spend an hour picking out your blank, drilling the hole, painting the holes, gluing your tubes in, turning it, putting your finish on it. Saving that extra buck or two on the component set just doesn't make sense to me at that point. So I always go with the reasonable, or I go by word of mouth more than how much something costs.
Mm-hmm.
And I evaluate it and I talk to a lot of people on it. So that's just my little 2 cents on that.
Yep. Okay, we'll finish up here, Dean, in about 2 seconds. So just put your transmission on. That's tough. Now test the pen at this point. If everything works fine and dandy at this point, and then when you put the top on, it doesn't, it's something in the top. So, use the parts that are there to find out for sure what you're doing. The center band then goes on. Center band is kind of cool. You can push down on that and make it go in nice and flat and make sure that that's what you're doing. If you put pressure on it sideways, you can cock it and you can crack your blank. And I can't begin to tell you how many I cracked in my years of doing this because you get in a hurry at the end. Don't rush. It'll still be there. Get it done carefully. And the last thing you're going to put on is the clip in the top. The other thing that people may not know, I've had calls about this, so it's going to sound primitive, but that top comes off. That's threaded. So if you look at that and say, oh, darn, I put the clip in the wrong spot, don't spin the clip. You'll ruin the coating you've got on your finish. So just release that pressure, move the clip where you want it, and then put the top back on, and you will have a fine pen. So with the cigar pen, unlike almost all the rest of them, you don't have to be careful where you put the clip. You can put the pen together completely and then decide where you want the clip. You can set up the pen so that you've got the match at the center band of your grain. So all in all, it's a really easy pen to make. It is right now one of the least expensive pens out there. It writes brilliantly, and of course it's a Parker refill. So you can put the 9000, and that's what the pen looked like when I got done. You can put the 9000 refill in it, and it will give you wonderful results for a very long time. And that's the end of my talk. Any questions?
So Brenda brought up that she uses a pen press and has a piece of acrylic that she uses to drill it out. So she's not pressing against her threads. I think that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
Do we have the 60-degree drive? I don't know. If we do, I mentioned Dean will put it up. But yes, it is something we should have. We do have 60-degree dead centers. That's what they would call that. And the other one is a 60-degree live center. So if you're looking for it on our website, that would be the search term that I would use.
I'll put up links in a moment. I think
Okay.
we are ready
That
for
having
our
been
first
said,
giveaway.
We're going to turn it over to Mark, who's actually.
No, we're going to turn it over to Dean for the first giveaway.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
All right, the first giveaway is active. You guys want to pick one of them,
Right.
which
I will
one it
show up.
is? And to be entered in the giveaway, just type the word free kit, all one word, into the chat, and you'll be entered into the drawing.
While they're doing that, one thing I've noticed that I've adapted in my practice now when I assemble a cigar pen is I'm using blue Loctite, and I'll put a little bit on the threads of the transmission, and once I get my pocket clip in place, I'll thread that a little bit on the top. So that way, I don't have somebody taking the pen apart just to see how it went together and then
Yep.
lose a part and come back and say, hey, I'm missing something or this thing's broke.
Yep.
Because you change your refills by unscrewing the nib.
Yep.
So it's just a little easier that it doesn't all come apart later.
One other thing, if you want to talk about this component set, the other thing that I had also found on these is, and I hate to say it because I actually did them, but some of the ones that are a little cheaper, when you go to press it, you can nick this. And so there is a little part here that unscrews off here, and then I'll use something to protect this. What I do use a lot to protect these things, if I'm not using a brass tube, is because I don't make European pens anymore, but the middle barrel on that European fits over all these. And then I would put that over that and then press it in that way.
You could use a small socket wrench.
Small socket wrench, yep.
You know, like somebody else commented, they drill a hole in a scrap piece of acrylic and do that, and it all works as long as it fits over your threads and it's not going to damage the metal plating.
The Cigar pen's a beautiful pen when it's done. For me, it's a little bit more robust and a little bit bigger.
The other thing is, if you make it and you make it too short, this part right here where you're looking at the nib, and then the cut piece above the nib that is decorative, that is a different color, you can unscrew that and you can put a piece of something else in there, and you can make that piece a little larger, and therefore it will make this nib a little bit farther, and it will take care of the fact that you shorten the tube too much.
So
go ahead.
So-
if I can add that, one of the things I've done to fix the fact if I've milled this tube a little short and the ink sticks out too far is I'll pull it apart. I'll unscrew the transmission and I'll take an 8mm brass tube and I'll slice off a very small, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, and I'll put over the threads and then screw the transmission on. And what that does is it moves your transmission back. And by that way, moving your ink tip back, and you haven't messed with the design of the pen. Everything is unseen because once the pen's put back together, you just replace the ink by unscrewing the nib. Nobody should ever have to pull that apart again. So you can make that repair without anyone seeing what's actually going on.
So guys,
It's a
can
cool
you
pen. I made a lot of them, thousands.
Dean's
And
gonna-
sold thousands. Go
guys, if you want to pick which kit it is, show us which kit and
Yep.
blank it is.
Yep.
So that's throw it under the close-up camera. I'll pop the close-up
You wanna-
camera on quick.
Get the close up on it. It's going to be, let me open the bag a little bit too so you can see. It's going to be the gunmetal diamond knurl with the Amboy.
There's the Amboyna burl. And there is your component set. And while Dean is picking, when you flip it over, you'll also get a card here talking about the Midwest Pen Turners Gathering in April. It's an event you don't want to miss.
All right. I think we're running it up about done. I am going to run the pick, but if you miss it this time, there's going to be 3 more coming. So our winner is, where's my select winner? Dennis Jansen. So Dennis, if we don't have your information, send an email to sales@Exotic Blanks so we can get that shipped out to you.
So Brenda brings up a great point. I think we've talked about this one. I think one of the things we should do in one of our Thursday night demos coming up in one of the next couple months is take a look at every pen component set that most people commonly do and talk about all the mistakes that most people commonly do. And you'll see I have a lot of experience in that field.
I don't make mistakes. I fix a lot of mistakes.
No, it's those kind of things. So I do like that idea and
Well,
making sure that we can fix our mistakes.
that's what makes us pen makers.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be able to fix things like that.
All right, are we ready
So
for the second demo?
All right, so in the second demo, what we're going to do is we're going to do basically a Vertex Supreme. So, Dean, you want to go to the camera underneath? So this is our Vertex Supreme, and we're going to do it as an acrylic. And you'll see that some of the stuff is going to be the same as what Ed does. Some of it's going to be slightly different. And I'm going to try to amplify on the things that are going to be different. So the first thing that you do when you do it is you're going to pick up your pen blank. And this pen blank is basically your standard size pen blank. So the nice thing about it is you're going to get a roller ball on it, and you don't have to worry too much about it. And then once you open up your component set, the first thing that you always pick out is the instructions. And as I always do, I throw them away so I never remember where I put them. But the biggest thing that you're going to do is you're going to need your tubes. And these are my tubes. And once again, like Ed points out, this one's got a top and a bottom. And these are going to drill slightly differently. So this one's going to drill, the top is going to be at 12.5, and the bottom is going to be at a 10.5 millimeter. So let's talk about how I do my lineup and how I do my. Let me move it so I got it in line. So can you see that I've got it all in line, and I make sure that everything matches up. And then I'm going to take this top off and draw a line. And I know Ed went over this, but I'm going to go over a little bit, some more detail as to what I do. And then I know that that top fits in there. And if you look at it, there's extra room on the top. So then I'm going to take a line with this, and I'm going to draw a line where my extra room is. I'm going to put the bottom on it. I'm going to draw a line where my extra room is. Then I'm going to do a couple things to this blank. I'm going to draw witness lines on here on a couple different sides. So then I know after I make my cut here, I want to make sure it's really important to me, especially on a wood blank or on a nice fine acrylic blank that you're going to be doing, that I want that orientation when this blank is closed to match up perfectly. So I'm going to draw a line on here so that this way I don't take this top when I go to turn it and flip it the wrong way, or turn the bottom and flip it the wrong way. So I'll put that little orientation line on there. And because I do this in production mode, this is a tip if you do a lot of stuff in production mode, I'll put a number on here. So I'll put a number 1 and I'll draw a line under it, a number 1 and I'll draw a line under it. So then this way, when I take it and I'm doing all my cutting and I'm doing all my drilling, I always know which ones match together in case I'm doing a couple blanks that look the same. And then the final thing that I'm going to do is when I get over here, I'm going to draw a line this way on the blank, and I'm going to draw an arrow this way and an arrow this way. And that's going to tell me that when I take it over to my drill press, or if I'm going to orient it in my lathe, I'm going to take this way, and I'm going to drill this part of the blank that way, and then I'm going to drill this part of the blank the other way. So that way, I'll always get that orientation to match. And so I agree with Ed 100%. If I'm only doing a couple of them, I love the way that Ed drills them, and he'll drill them right on the lathe. If I'm going to be drilling a lot of them, I will use my drill press. And the nice thing about it is, if I'm doing it on the lathe, I'm not as concerned as that is. I will because the lathe has got a nice positive stop to it, and it's got positive hold. I rarely will get that blowout, but I love that little extra step that you do. But if I'm doing it on a drill press, you're almost always going to get blowout. I don't care how sensitive you are to the end of it, you're always going to get blowout. So when I take this to my drill press, I'm going to match it up so my drill bit goes into here, but never clears all the way out. And then it's going to drill over here, into here, and it's never going to clear all the way out. And then what happens is when I start my drill and I go into here, then I'll start my drill, I'll go into here. Once I'm done with it, I will then take it over to my bandsaw, and I'll clip that end off on my bandsaw, and I'll clip that end off on my bandsaw. So I am doing much more in my garage and in my bandsaw. So if you guys have any questions about this, please let me know. Write it up in the comments. I'm following it as best I can for you.
If I can comment real quick,
Please.
one thing I've learned: if I cut my blank in half and I'm using a pen vise on a drill press, if my blank is a little short and I don't have room to leave that little extra that I'm going to cut off, I'll stack a scrap piece of acrylic underneath of it. That way, there's something there to stop that blowout from coming out.
Mhm.
So it just seems to help. But of course, another thing is if your drill bits aren't sharp, that's where they may catch that material, and the material wants to feed up the blank or pull and crush the acrylic. So if you're getting that, definitely sharpen your drill bit or replace it.
And then the last couple of things that I'll mark on here is I will mark on here that this is a 10.5 on this bottom. And then on the top, I'm going to drill it at 12.5. And the only reason I do that is because, as I said, I might literally have 20 to 40 blanks that I'm going to go and press. And I use a cookie sheet, and then I'll literally mark on the cookie sheet that these are Vertex Supremes, and I'll put an index card on it. Or I will come on the side and I'll put Vertex Supreme, Junior, Sierra, whatever I'm doing on it, so that I have it. So I do see, keep the drill bit cool as well.
Yep.
I agree with you 100%. You can't ask more than that. I will keep the drill bit, and I will plunge in, keep coming out all the time. All right. So any questions on the way that I've got this set up? Perfect.
We got a little pop up on
Yeah,
the screen there.
Yeah, Dina, does everybody see the pop-up on the screen, or is that just on our side? Okay, there's
Wait,
Okay.
oh, there we go.
There it is.
never mind. We fixed it.
Thanks, Dean.
All right, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to my drill press. Oh, sorry, my bandsaw. I'm going to cut this, drill that one that way, drill that one that way, and cut this off. Now, one step that Ed doesn't do in wood, or nobody does in wood, that I'm going to do in acrylic is very important to me, is painting. And so you can see here, I'm a big advocate of painting the hole. I know people will say, well, you could paint the brace. This is always one of the ones where I watch YouTube and I see, Facebook, and I see a ton of comments on there. And people will say, well, you just got to paint the tube. I like to paint the brass. I like to paint the hole because if you think about it, if I don't want that brass tube to show, light's going to come through the blank. It's going to hit into the paint, and then it's going to reflect itself back out. If I'm painting the brass tube, it's got to go through the glue before it'll bounce itself back out. And I know, John, you're a big advocate of painting both.
Yeah.
And so John will paint both. I have found, especially depending on what I'm doing and what kind of material I'm using, I will typically only paint the hole. If you're going to ask, I use testers or model paint on there. I like apple barrel paint from Michael's. I love Michael's apple barrel paint. It's an acrylic paint. And I will typically paint them all, and then I'll let them sit for 24 hours before I do my gluing in.
Yep.
So now the gluing in is also, I mean, this seems so subtle, but it is really important. I will make sure that when I'm doing my gluing in, same thing as like Ed's going to do, I will take my 5-minute epoxy and I'll mix it. I'm not going to do it here, but I will mix it up on this piece of paper. Now, one thing that I don't do, Ed, that you do, and I love that idea, is I don't seal my ends.
Okay.
But what I'll do is when I do this, I'll take the tube and I'll roll it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of, this is where we just differ.
Mm-hmm.
I don't put it in the hole because I find that the way you do it is perfect with it being plugged. But if I don't plug this, it then becomes a plow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will take this, roll it in here. I'm not going to get much glue into here. And then same thing you do. I'm going to put it in, pull it out, put it in, pull it out, and I'm going to get it till it goes all the way down. And on this side that has the line, I'm barely going to let it go in. It's going to go in just a little bit because I want that orientation to stay in place. And then what I do is I'll pull it on the side, and I'll do the same thing on this side. I'll take this, I'll put it in, I'll roll it in, and then I'll get it, and it'll just barely put it in, and then it's going to go there.
And
Now,
full disclosure, I will say that one of the things that I like least about the way I do things is that every time when I take that wax off out of the tube, it takes a while to clean that tube. There's stuff inside it. There's stuff around. It is not a clean process. So my way is open to all kinds of improvement.
Okay, so what paint that? Sorry, I'm going to answer questions I do.
Yep.
Yeah, what paint do I use again? Yes, I use testers enamel paint. I'm going to just be completely transparent. It's very expensive on those little model paints. So I use Apple Barrel, and I see Robert says that Apple Barrel is also available at Walmart as well.
It's everywhere.
I love it.
Hobby Lobby, you name it, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I love
60
Apple Barrel.
cents.
Yeah.
So one of the questions,
Exactly.
though, is when we paint it, how important is painting? And I know most people will say that, well, I'm going to paint it white. And so there's a yellow tube, a yellow pen that I've done.
See, I would have painted that yellow.
And you paint it white. You know, people will. I just don't notice as much variance on it if I don't.
I match the color to the blank.
Mhm.
But-
The paint's cheap enough, and I use spray paint as well. So
But the nice thing is, I will also dramatically change it. Like this one is literally the exact same blank, and that one I painted black, and they're both. That's the blank. So you can see a huge difference between painting it white, painting it black, and what the blank looks like. Same thing with, you'd say, well, it may not be as noticeable on darker colors. Well, there's purple. I love that one. It may not be as noticeable. Yeah, it is. It's pretty noticeable on the camera. And that pen is this blank. This one's painted in white. This one's painted in black. And I have also experimented, and I've got some nice pictures of it here, is that I'll also do vignettes, John, and where I'll paint, especially on this yellow one, I've got a couple on my website, where I'll paint the bottom of the bottom black and paint it all the way up part way to get it into white.
Yep.
And then I'll paint this part white here and paint this part black, and you get a nice vignette that goes through it. It's going to go, sorry about that, David. I'm trying to move the blanks now. You will get that nice vignette that'll go through. It'll color part of it, come back out, color part of it. And this is just one of those things that you want to do. You know, I hate to say it this way, but it's if you're going to do shows, and I know someone here said that they're going to start doing their art shows, it's just a way to differentiate yourself. And I am always about how I'm going to differentiate myself in the way that I make a pen. So anybody have any questions about, right now we've done it. We've drilled the hole out. Now, one thing that I want to point out is, and this is a very, very typical question, is if you're coating the pen and you're coating it with a paint, is that going to make it harder for the brass tube to fit in and out of it? And this is just what I have found. I have found on any of the 10.5s and 12.5s, there's no impact on it. I use a light coat. I have found, though, on slimlines, when I do a slimline and I paint it, I will notice that makes that brass tube very, very tight to get in and out of it. So what I'll do is, instead of drilling it at 7 millimeters, I'll drill it at 9/32. I get that little bit more. I think it's 4,000ths in it, so I'll get that little bit more to accommodate the paint that I'm putting into it. And I just find that gives me just enough of it so I can get that brass tube in free and clear.
Mhm.
I don't want to have it, if I'm going to jam it in, I don't want that because I don't want to scratch.
Yep, you're going to remove the paint inside the tube, and you're going to see that. That's why I paint both, because I've done that. I've scratched the inside of the hole, and I want that extra coating on the tube so that the brass doesn't shine through.
Yeah, and this will be a running joke. I'm sure that there's a couple people in the crowd. Is why don't I worry about scratching the tube or scratching the inside?
Because your wife does it.
Because I don't do any of it.
Right.
This is what I'm telling you. It's what my wife does.
Yeah.
Because I will drill the hole. She does all the painting. She does all my gluing for everything on me. So but this is just the way that we've done it. So I'm looking up to see if I've got any questions coming in real time. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to move on to the next step.
Yeah, I use spray paint to paint the holes as well, and then I'll just blow through one end of the blank to blow any excess paint out,
Mhm.
and that way it doesn't build up or sit in the bottom of the drilled hole and gather up. So it goes on fairly thin. You don't want to, just stick the nozzle up and spray it, and then I'll roll the blank around and blow it out. So works pretty well.
So one thing that I do use, and let's go back to this.
Can we go back to the other camera, Dean, please? Is I do use a barrel trimmer,
But you'll see what I do, and I agree 100% with what Ed said about making sure that, I don't want this to be too deep. I will go back in, and as I said, I've got that line. I will cut that line, so I'm not going to be going in too deep. And you can see that when I'm doing my barrel trimming, it's very small amount that I'm going to barrel trim it, and I will do it right on a drill press. And I've got a piece of wood that I have on the bottom of my drill press that has a hole in it, so that when this is going down, it's not going into the piece of wood. It's, let's see, yeah, there you go. That's not exposing itself into the piece of wood. There's a little hole, and I've got it all lined up.
Yeah, that hole in the bottom is essential. In other words, you're never going to get that deep enough, and that tapered point's going to catch and give you a problem. So.
Yep. So I like it, and it's really, I only want to get it a couple quick buzzes because I don't want it to be building up heat. Because if you ask me, this came up earlier when someone asked about glue.
You want to go to the big screen again?
Yeah, if you want to go to the big screen, please. Dean.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you, Dean. When I'm gluing it in, I think this is, when people asked about scuffing the blanks and things like that, to me, this is the part where I also don't scuff my blanks anymore. I did when I was first doing it, and I don't scuff it now. But I do think that if you're using a barrel trimmer in your blank, this is just my personal conjecture, is if you're using a barrel trimmer in that blank and you're taking a really, really deep cut, you're actually heating that barrel trimmer all the way up. And that barrel trimmer is going to then expose heat into the brass tube, and that brass tube is then going to be heating into that glue, and that's what's going to cause a little bit of a problem.
So two problems.
Yeah,
Because
please.
if you've got epoxy inside of your brass tube and now you use this mill, essentially what could happen is the heat is going to build up and you're going to glue your blank to your pen mill and you're not going to be able to get it off. It's going to be a problem. So you always want to make sure that you clean out the inside of the tube. You can use a flat end of an oak pair of scissors. You can use a rat tail file. Exactly. And remove any any epoxy that's in that tube, because it's going to create two problems. One, it's going to heat up and glue your mill inside, and the second is you don't want to crack that blank when you assemble it, because it's going to expand your parts even more.
And I have heard that, I've never really done this. If you do get a chunk of glue in there when you did plow it in, I actually use the other side of the rat tail file, and I can actually take it and I can use it as a way to just pry out a little bit of that. I don't know if we can see it better on. Can we go to the other camera, Dean? I can this and just give it a little bit of a knock out of here, and I can get that glue out. I will manually look this through, and I will make sure that there is no glue on any part of this. And that's important to me, especially when I go back to the other camera, please, Dean. When I actually go to mount this up on my lathe, I don't want those bushings pressing in hard. I don't want to make it hard. I've seen videos, I've seen demonstrations where people will actually take the tailstock and ram it into the bushing, into the thing to get that in. All you're asking for is, that works great when I've got all this chunk of plastic or acrylic on it, and then when I've got to go to get it out, I don't have that much. And then I've seen people take pliers and pull it out, and then you're going to bend it and torque it, and then you crack it, and then you go, well, why did this crack? It's because when this was half an inch or a quarter of an inch, it's easy to put pressure on it. When it goes down to a 1/16 of an inch, and I go to turn it, and I go to pull that brass tube out or that bushing out of it, it just cracks.
So another option too, I learned from Dick Singh, is you can use white urethane Gorilla Glue. And the nice thing about the urethane glue is they come in one bottle. You don't have to pre-mix anything. Put it in the tube, let it kind of expands a bit. It sets up. But the nice thing is it cleans up a little easier, and it's white, so you can actually see where it's at. You know, you might miss some clear, transparent epoxy if you're not looking at the right angle, but you're going to see that white urethane glue. And so it scrapes out pretty easy to clean up, and holds great. So,
Well, and that's a great point. I want to point out though, and amplify on that. It's got to be the white Gorilla urethane glue.
yes.
Normal Gorilla Glue is water activated, and if you do that, a lot of those those urethane Gorilla Glues will never set because there's no water to activate it on the other side. So it's a specific model that's out there.
So any questions, comments, anything that I need to know right now?
Looks like everybody's getting their orders in.
Yeah.
Yeah, people getting their orders in.
Awesome.
Nobody's listening to me. Everybody's going to get their order in.
Well, I'm glad I picked my blanks before we did this, because you guys would have bought them all up. So I still get to leave with some, unless there's more orders than pen blanks. Then we'll take Mark's first.
So my tool of choice, I'm going to do this on the big camera right now. My tool of choice is I like a carbide tool. And it's because, I did the same thing, right, Ed? I learned I've been a pen turner for about 30 years. And as I always joke, you'll look at my stuff and go, 30 years, you'd think he'd be better. But so I bit the bullet and I learned how to use a skew. I like the oval skew over the more traditional skew. I find it a little bit more flexible. But once I went to carbide tools for my pen turning, this is just my tool of choice. And if I could only have, this is the silliest question that I always hear turners talk at symposiums. If I only had one tool that I could take with me, and they always go, I would use a bowl gouge, or I would take a spindle gouge. Well, you know what the problem with any of those tools are? In 20 minutes, you're going to have to sharpen it. You're on a desert island. You don't have any way to sharpen it. Nice thing about carbide tools is I can get 40 to 80 hours out of this cutter. And all I got to do is take this cutter, rotate it, and move it.
Unless you're cutting antler.
Yeah. Well, you know what I do? It's a complete aside. What I'll do for antler is when I find that this thing gets tired, I will take this one off and I will keep it.
Yeah.
And then when I'm going to do antler, I'll throw that one back up on the
So
antler,
you're not ruining the fresh
and I'm
one.
not going to wreck my fresh blade.
Absolutely.
So one thing about using these tools that I want to talk about is that if you look here, and I know it'd be hard to see, so I'm not gonna point it out. But I start with the EWT logo directly on top, and then every time I rotate this, I'll take the little screw, I'll unscrew it, and I'm gonna rotate it counterclockwise. No, I'm gonna rotate counterclockwise. No, counterclockwise.
Oh.
And then that way I know that this is my fresh edge. Let me explain what I'm gonna do. When I go to actually make my turns, when I go to rough it out, can we go to the other camera, John?
Yep.
Can we see? When I make my rough turns, I'm going to turn the tool handle at about a 45-degree angle this way. And I'm going to rotate it down, and I'm going to make my cuts that way. And so this is the edge that's getting beaten up a lot. And then when I'm going to make my finer cuts, I'm going to then take this edge, and I'm going to put it in, and that's where I'm going to make my finer cuts when I'm going to be done. So tool orientation, and then every time I rotate it, I will take my black marker. I use a piece of blue tape on here. I'll take my black marker and I'll rotate it, and then I'll put a number on here every time I rotate it. When I get to 4, that means I rotated the cutter head enough times, and I'm done with using that cutter head. So hopefully that makes sense.
I actually mark right on the cutter head. I draw a line
Perfect.
where I used it, and that way from the center out to the edge. Because the cutter edge, you'll wear that away if you touch it. But
Yeah, I agree with you.
But you'll see marks from the lead screw coming in to the directions that I've already used.
And if you're religious about it and you're using the EWT logo, and you know that when I put it on, I always put it on at 12 o'clock.
Yep.
You don't have to go through this step. This is just something that I tell people to give them a nice reminder
Yeah, absolutely.
on how to do it. So I'm going to go through my turning technique, I'm just seeing if everybody.
I'm going to go through my turning technique, and then I'm not going to necessarily go through all the finishing technique, but I'm going to talk about how I turn an acrylic blank. And you're going to see I've got 3 different cuts. My first cut is a roughing cut, where I'm basically going to take the tool, I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to plow my way out, and I'm going to cut almost all this down. Then I'm going to take it, and I'm going to do what I call my peel cut, where I'm going to put it at a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to move it down, and you'll see I'm going to get really nice shreds. And then I'm going to work my ends, and then I'm going to finish it. So without any further ado, normally I would be wearing a mask. I forgot to bring my mask. So without any further ado, I'm going to get ready to go. So the lathe that's going at the fastest that this lathe can go on the fastest speed. Tool is always. John, can you go back to the front? Tool is always at horizontal. I don't ever want to see the tool coming in this way. I don't want to ever see the tool going in this way. It's always at horizontal. If you're having a challenge with turning acrylics, there's also the negative rate cutter that you can use, and that's got a little bit of a bevel. One of the things that I see on YouTube all the time is people tell me, or people say, well, all you got to do is turn the tool this way, and I'm going to get that little bit of bevel so I don't have to buy a different cutter. All this does right here is you've halfway thrown this into the wall if you ever lose control out of it. It's not the same geometry, so make sure that you always have this level. I will do something slightly different. When I'm turning, because you can't see it when I'm there, so I want to do it here, is I know a lot of people will hold the tool in the back of the tool here, and they'll have it on the tool rest, and they'll go this way. I like to put my hand over the tool this way, where the tool is completely concealed under my forearm, and then I'll use my hand this way on it. And to me, it's more natural. If I asked you to write with a pen, you wouldn't hold the pen down here to write with it. You're going to hold the pen up here. So I get much, much better control if I hold the tool this way and my finger's over it, and I'm just making my fine cuts that way. So, John, if you want to go back to this one. Thank you, sir. I'll typically turn with the lathe at the fastest it'll go. I'm going to take that first cut. I'm going in. So now I've got this blank round. I don't know if you can see it on there, but it's round. A couple things that I always want to talk about is shop safety and safety is now I've got a pretty decent gap here. So I will take the time to stop my lathe, turn it, and move it in. And so that way it's just a little bit of a safety thing so I don't have to worry about this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tool, rotate it, and this camera is a little bit in my way, so we'll see how well I can do this. I'm going to take the tool, I'm going to rotate it in here, and I'm going to make my cut this way. You know what? I'm going to have to move this out of the way. Go ahead and get it dressed on the tool. There you go. Thank you. Perfect. So I'm going to take the tool. And now remember, as I said, this is always my fresh edge when I'm here. This is the edge that I used when I did that plunge cut and I was making my cuts this way. So this is my fresh edge. This is always my new edge, right? Because I'm always rotating it counterclockwise. So my new edge is always this side. So that's why I'm going to be able to put it in here and I'm going to make my peel cut. Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead. What's the question?
I'm straight from here.
You ever rotate the carbide on a long axis like a skew, or do you always hold it perfectly flat left to right?
I always hold it perfectly flat left to right. I don't ever orientate it or move it up like a skew. So I'm gonna turn this back on. And now this is gonna be the peel cut. So the handle is, and the tool is underneath my hand. And I do make a contest out of it. You can see here. I'm trying to see how long I can get that ribbon. I'm trying to get one big, long, immersive ribbon. So I'm going to take it in here. So they always say how many licks does it take to get to the center of a top Tootsie Roll? 1, 2, 3. I can almost get my cuts down to that. So I'm not going to go, I don't know how much more you want me to really go on to doing this one. But you can see here what I did was I took that tool.
You use it to get the stuff off there when you need to.
You know,
I don't
me,
care about you.
I do. John's on here next, so what do I care about that?
So it doesn't get tied up around there.
So you can see here, I'm right at my edge. So I'm going to be taking off that edge at the next one. So I'm just going to do about half the blank to show you how I finish my turning on here. Let the tool always make sure that it comes up to speed. Now I know that this is going to make a crack pop here. There it went. So you saw that it popped.
Turn to the outside in.
Give me 1 sec. Because that's an excellent point, Doug. So what I would normally do, and I did this when I was doing my roughing cut. I guess I didn't. That's actually the hardest thing about this is if you get a really, really nice cut, this just wraps all the way around your grass tube. So what I'll do is I'll go to about the 3/4 of the way point here, and then I'll start it on the other edge and come back in. So then that way I'm never going and I never have to force tear out. Now you can see here I've got this down. It's pretty darn smooth. So now I'm going to do that last cut. And I think this is one of the things that where most people struggle is undercutting your bushing or overcutting it or anything that you're going to do there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the tool. You'll see here when I'm doing it at a really, really over-exaggerated angle. It's going to be way over here, right? Or over here. And I'm going to let it find its edge, and then I'm going to roll it. And you're going to see it's going to, I'm going to do it amplified here, where you're going to get more of a roll on the edge, and it'll make sense in a second. Letting it come up to speed. I'm taking the tool at a big angle, and I'm rolling it. I'm taking the tool at a big angle, and I'm rolling it. So now it's completely flush with this bushing. It might be hard to see on the camera, but it is completely flush with this bushing right here. So now I don't ever have to worry about going over there again and undercutting it or doing anything there. Now what I'll do is I'll just make a series of refinement cuts that I'm here to cut that down to get it all the way down to the other side. And I've got a blank that's perfectly center or perfectly flush to the bushings, and I don't have to worry about it. And that's really, really, I love this technique also on wood. On a burl, it may not be as important, but on a wood that has grain and layers, if you catch that grain or that layer over here, you can undercut it and have part of that thing chip out, that grain part chip out, and that's automatically going to go under. Now, I know all the professionals in the room, or I'm watching this, if this was wood and I'm coming over here and I'm making that cut backwards this way, all the professionals are going to say, Mark, that's an uphill cut. You're going against the grain. It's an uphill cut. That's not right. I'm only doing it for 1/16 of an inch when I'm doing it, and I don't worry about that. I make sure that it's there, and there's enough grain here to support me to make that cut back in. I'm not really making a cut. I'm just going to the surface level, taking a 1/16 of an inch off, and I'm peeling it back. So I don't have to worry about that one as going against the grain. I'm not going to go the whole blank that way. I'm only going to do it for this little part that's over here. And the nice thing about it is I'm only doing it, as you can see here, at about the 1/16 of an inch off the bushing.
Plus, it's resin; it's not wood, so you can get away with cutting uphill with resin, unlike you can with wood grain.
Yeah, but even with wood, I'll do that exact same technique.
Yeah.
The only thing that I differ with wood is that I will use the square cutter, and I will plunge cut it down. Meaning I will use here. I'll show it to you.
I get some of my best cuts uphill.
I use the square cutter, and I will plunge this all the way down to get it to go down. And I can knock down a blank literally in 10 seconds if I do it that way. And so what I'll do is I'll make that first cut. I'll get it down to where it's about a 1/16 of an inch away. And then I'll just expose about half the cutter, and I'll plunge till I get it all the way down to the other end. So anybody have any questions about technique or how I do mine? So I don't know where we're standing on time, and I feel like I'm Santa Claus.
27.
Okay, so I wanna get John on time. So what I'll do on acrylics, this is the one also. This is the little piece of advice that's not commonly referred to. So do I look really weird?
No.
Okay. Yeah, let's go back to the front camera. So I know I look like I've got snow on top of me. If I'm using a commercial grade blank, one of these, that's always the weird thing. Acrylic is not all acrylic. Everything is not acrylic. It's not just wood or acrylic. There's a whole bunch of different blanks and different hardnesses and things like that. Most commercial grade blanks like this, my finish when I put it on, I'm going to go through my I'm going to wet sand it down. I'm going to micro mesh it down, and then I'm going to use Novus polish on it. I love using the Novus polish on it. I will show you a little cheap technique that my wife did, and I love this. To actually do the polish on it, this is an old soap dispenser that we have, and I will simply take a piece of blue paper towel, take it, use the soap dispenser to get my polish on it, and then I'll put it on the pen blank and do it and buff it all out. Now that's what I do on what's commonly called to as a store grade acrylic. If I'm doing a pen, and Dean, can we go back to the other one? If I'm doing an Alumilite pen, this pen blank is Alumilite, or the one that I was actually turning is a piece of Alumilite. I will actually take the extra minute at the end, and I will put a glue boost finish on it. I find that glue boost gives me just a little bit more shine. It gives me a little bit brighter finish to it. But I will tell you this, I don't necessarily do all the steps. I don't necessarily do the thick on top of it. I can get away with 2 to 3 coats of the orange, which is where I'm at. That builds up just you can see on here, this has got a really nice, can you see the shine line on here? It's got a really nice shine line that goes on there. And that's simply because I put a couple, 2-3 coats of glue boost, just the orange on, and that's how I get the finish off here. So being conscious of time, I wanted to make sure that I was with everything where they're going.
Show them.
Go ahead.
And it has this as well. Dean, can we go back to the big screen? It has a nice chart here. You can find them online. They're all over the place. He says, I don't have one, so I'm going to have to get one. But they're great for showing your drill bit sizes and the steps on how they increase or decrease. So when you're drilling your
When
blades.
you leave, you have that one.
I do, don't I? Look, it comes in a nice plastic case.
That's a nice classic.
But they're great to have in the shop because you can see which size drill you want to step up to if you find that the hole's a little tight and you need to step the bit size up. This tells you the sizes that you want. It gives you both fractions and decimals and millimeters, and it's pretty thorough. So that's very nice.
One of the things that people have asked about, because it's come up with that ped kit that I'm getting from Netherlands, is what is a W bit? Nobody has heard of wire size bits. So one of the things about this type of a chart, it gives you metric, it gives you imperial, it gives you wire sizes, and it gives you numbered. So basically everything that you can go to any reasonable any hardware store that's still around that sells stuff, they will have all these different sizes, and most of the charts don't tell you that, but there's a lot of them on the internet. This is not something you need to buy. The one that I have here, I copied off the internet.
Is there a chance that you could? I know this is asking a lot. Is there a chance you could scan it, put it in part of your website?
That's an excellent idea. I don't know about copyright though. That might be an issue. I'll look. If there's no copyright on it, I'll be happy to do that. Otherwise, we can get you links to where you can.
Yeah, you
get
can at least find a link to that one,
Yeah.
and they can click on the link for that.
And I want mine poster size to hang on the wall next to my drill.
So do I. So do I. And unfortunately, I don't have it that way. This is the way it comes. 8.5 by 11 with a folder on it. And I have dozens of them. So yes, you're welcome to them.
So a couple quick questions that I see starting out there. When applying Glue Boost, do you prefer paper towel, shop towel, or gun cleaning patches? I clearly blue shop towel. Home Depot has this. This is by far my favorite. I find that just white paper towel is a little bit more, I don't want to say coarse, but blue shop towel to me just gives me my nice finish on here. And I will tell you, check out, I'm sure my video is on your webpage.
Mm-hmm.
I do Glue Boost slightly differently, where I'll do it with the lathe completely off.
I actually use Bounty. I use the backside of Bounty. I buy the half sheets and cut them in half so it's a quarter, roll them up, and it's just what works for me because that's what I have on hand.
Yeah, this is the blue shop towel from Home Depot. There's a big brawny guy on the cover for it.
All right. I think we're in between things. Let's do our second giveaway.
We're gonna do
Mark,
another
can you
giveaway.
grab I think there's a copper kit, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
The green one. The green one here. Yep.
Green copper, nice.
So for this giveaway, type copper. Nice and easy. One word, COPPER in the chat, and we'll get you entered. And what blank is with it? The green blank?
The green blank. Yep, with the antique copper.
It's a green. This is wood.
Look at them all coming in.
I'm going to do this.
Geez, you think we were giving something away for free? Oh, wait.
It's still 88 people watching.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Appreciate everybody showing up tonight. We weren't sure what to expect, what the changeover, but it's been a great turnout. So it's great to see everybody.
Betty, give me a minute and I will answer your question.
I think you can go ahead and answer it, Mark, while they're
Yeah,
typing.
he's going to be waiting.
Okay,
So go
so
ahead.
I'm
it says,
going to give him a couple
speaking
minutes to type the entry in. So
Speaking of drilling and the 12.5 and the 10.5, people will say start out with going to a smaller bit and then drilling it up and bigger and bigger and bigger, or a bigger bit. You know what? The only reason you do that is really to stop blowout. And if you do it the way that I do it, where I don't drill all the way through, I'm never going to have blowout. So a sharp bit, I will never do something smaller. I'll always start at a sharp bit. I don't want to say it this way. It's possibly because I'm lazy that I don't want to pull it out and put it back in. And then because I've got my drill press oriented always perfectly on center. So I hope that answers your question, buddy. I don't do it that way. I will drill directly with it, and I will have sharp bits. And I hate to say this, I will sharpen the bit. And or, if the bit starts to get a little dull, I hate to say this, I will throw it out and I'll just buy a new bit. It's just, I want that bit to be as sharp as possible to avoid blowout. So hopefully that answers your question. So Dean, who's walking away with the lovely blue?
okay, I think we're getting close. Let's slow down a bit here.
Lovely
I can do the entry. Let's see.
Oh, wait, hang on, Dean. I said copper too, so I'm in now too.
Oh, okay. You'll have to ask the AI to type it in there for you.
Or the D, I can ask Dawn to type it in for me.
Select winner. The winner of this one is Gary Ryman.
type it in, I get the kit.
Oh,
All
sorry.
right.
Spelled it wrong.
And again, Gary, if you're not a customer, make sure send exotic sales at exotic blanks an email so we know how to get it to you.
So does anybody have any more questions for me? If not, I'm going to turn it
Okay,
over to John.
All right. For
Wait,
my-
you know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it okay to do one quick commercial for the MVG before we get to the last one?
Sure.
Well, it's only because I saw a couple people over there chatting about it. Dean, can we go to the other camera, please?
If you haven't been to this event, this is a fantastic event. This is that I think this is the 6th year that we've been doing it. This started out in Champaign, and all the people who were involved with this are still with the organization. I think this might be 15 years probably,
If not more.
if not more. And it is the longest and the largest pen making gathering out there. It's only $59 to sign up on it. It's 2 full days of demos at Hoffman Estates, Illinois. Typically we get about 300 pen makers in there doing it. I love for the fact that we can actually say that we're international because we get 2 to 3 people from Canada. They're always our favorites to come on in. But I know that they've already signed up. We normally get about 20 to 25 states represented at it. I was just down, it was kind of funny. I was just telling these guys this story. I was down in Orlando last week, and I was wearing a Midwest Pen Turners Gathering t-shirt. This is a true story. And I had a couple people come up to me and ask me about the event, told them about it, and when I got home, we checked out our sign up, and someone from Florida had signed up. So I don't know if it was someone I talked to, and if you're coming to this event, I love chatting with you guys. So I saw a couple of people said, can't remember the gentleman, because the copper came in, how they said that they love coming to it and they start planning it the week after the last one. Come up and talk to us. I love doing this. So 2 full days. If you go on the website, you're going to learn about casting. You're going to learn about pen making. We've got a couple new ones that we're going to be doing. Part of it is a preview for John and I for being what we're going to be doing in the AAW for the one in June. And I'm just talking while John is cleaning up and getting ready. So that's all going to be there. $59. Check out the website. If you have any questions, please let us know. You can see we've got some spectacular some spectacular vendors out there also. And I always tell people, the sooner you sign up, the more chance that you'll actually win the big prize. We will be giving away a lathe. In general, I would say we give away between $8,000 and $10,000 worth of prizes. And I don't know anybody who comes to the event that paid the $59 that doesn't leave with the door prize worth of at least more than $59. So I think it's a great event. It's a great way to socialize with people. So if you're coming out to it, please stop by and say hi to John or myself, and Ed will be one of the vendors out there. And then if you go to the AAW, please stop by and say hi to John, Ed, or myself at the AAW.
All right.
Can I do one more self-aggrandizing one?
Sure.
All right, this is Dan, can you go back to me? This is completely self-aggrandizing. Is anybody here from Chicago or the Chicagoland area? Type Chicago in on the comment section. Please be one person from Chicago. All right. Anybody else? Thank you, William. If you guys are from Chicago, watch Channel 5
Oh, that's
tomorrow.
right.
Channel 5 from 11:30 to noon. They've got something called Chicago Today, and they feature someone, and I'm going to be on for about 15 minutes talking about pen making on Channel 5 News. So it's kind of fun to be there. I'd love to have a little bit more support, and knowing people are going to be there and watching and having a little support. So it's a great little event. Channel 5 tomorrow, 11:30. Check it out. It's a nice big channel to watch it on. Thank you, Ken. And now, with no further ado, I'm going to drop it off to John.
All right. What I'm going to talk about is turning a feather blank. And this, I chose a feather blank because it's a more common blank of what I make. But basically, I wanted to cover something tube on. So the nice thing about tube on is you don't have to drill a hole. You don't have to worry about what drill bit to use, how to drill it, whether it's drill press or the lathe. And you don't have to worry about epoxying a tube in, because I've already done that for you. So you can mill these down whichever you prefer. If I'm in a shop and I want to knock out a bunch of work, I'm going to use a drill press and I'm going to use a pen mill. Now, a lot of people say, well, where can I get pen mills to fit all this stuff? I've gotten everything through Ed, but I don't have a 27/64 pen mill shaft. So I'm using a 10 millimeter because when I picked these up, I think the set was 7, 8, and 10.
Okay.
And you can buy sleeves to fit your juniors or your upper roller balls. They make a sleeve that slides over the shaft of a 7 millimeter, and it allows you to do your larger tubes. But what I do in this case, I'm using a 10 millimeter shaft, and I'm taking a short piece of a 10 millimeter tube, which was a cigar pen that Ed turned tonight, and I slide that over top of that shaft, and it fits perfectly inside the 27/64. So it allows you to kind of cheat and use this mill without having to buy another sleeve or a mill for it. So I'm going to do this in a few stages. I'm going to start the drill press up, and I'm just going to lower it in gradually, and I keep raising it to clear out the shavings so that I can see when I hit that brass tube. Now, you don't want to go crazy and mill it down, but no matter how you do it, whether you put it on a block and bump it, there's so many ways which we've seen tonight. You can also turn it round and then put it on a V block, square it up with a disc sander, and bump it off that way, whatever your preference is. But regardless of what you do, you're going to leave a little bit of a burr on the end of this brass tube. So it's important to turn that off. And I chuckle now because I used to use a pair of scissors until I caught heck from Dick Singh, who said, don't ever use a pair of scissors to do that again. So he made me this nice reamer. And they come in handy. What you're doing is basically just you're going to cut the end of that tube. And so now where the brass tube walls used to be straight, they're now kind of chamfered open a little bit. And that works for two things. One, it allows you to put this on and off your bushings easier, but also during assembly, it's going to allow everything to mate up a little closer and easier. If you left a burr, chances are none of them milled pen parts are perfectly at 45 or 90 degree angles, so they may not meet up perfect. And I don't know about you, but I've had pens when I first started that I could hold up and see a gap of light where the pen piece component set mates up to the blank. And so by tapering that opening, it allows those component parts to get closer to your blank. So this is a Sierra, and I always made them up with the diamond knurl, the ballpoint, and they're one of my favorites. And the reason for that is because it allows me to put Loctite on all the threads except for the nib. That way, when I get down to assembling this, nothing's going to come apart. Nobody's ever going to push the transmission up into the body of the pen that I'm going to have to dig out and fix for them. That pen clip is never going to spin if I didn't press it in tight enough. So I always take all of my parts out and I put Loctite on all of my threads except for the nib. The nib I will leave because that's how I'm going to change the refill. I'm going to unscrew it, change my spring on my new ink, slide it in, and tighten it back down. Now, if you're using one of the other versions of the Sierra, chances are this doesn't unscrew, so you can't glue your transmission on or use Loctite because you have to be able to access your ink for refills. But with the diamond knurl, nobody ever has to pull anything apart other than unscrew the nib, change the ink, and screw it back on. So everything else, the finial, the transmission, it all gets a dab of Loctite on the threads. And on the pen clip, when I assemble that, I pull it off the finial, and I put a little bit of Loctite around the top of that ring, and I seat it back on there on that finial. I put a couple drops inside the top of the pen, and then I press it in. And then you wipe it off the clean cloth, and you let it set for about an hour. That way, everything sets up, and that clip's never going to spin on you. So after we mill this blank down, before I turn it, because I've exposed the top edge of these feathers, I always take the teal label, the new ultra thin, with a whip tip. Definitely helps, because without it, you're going to put a bunch of glue on this and it's going to run over. You're going to glue your fingers to it. So I use the whip tip, and I come up top here and I just put a bead around that top edge, and I roll it around and I let it wick in, give it a light burst of glue dry, and I let it set, and usually less than a minute, and you're able to put it on your bushings. But what that does is two things. It stops you from getting sanding dust inside of any of the top of your blank, regardless of what it is. Whatever is clear cast, especially, because everything's visible once you turn it down. So you want to seal that end. Secondly, if I wet sand this after I turn it down, it stops moisture from getting in underneath my casting and messing anything up. So I always seal my ends after I mill them off, and it just protects everything. And I've done that already when I milled this off and brought it. Another thing, this time of year especially, it's cold in the shop. Again, my shop was 52 degrees yesterday. I didn't spend a lot of time in there. So I needed to turn a couple pens. What I do, an hour or so before I turn a clear cast, especially in any cold weather, I put it in my pocket, and then I go about my business doing other stuff around the house or the shop. When I get down to where I'm going to turn that and I take it out of my pocket, that resin now is warm. It's warm resin is less chippy, I guess is the way to phrase that. If you're using cold resin and you've ever gone in to cut on it and all of a sudden it shatters or blows out on you, cold resin will do that. The warmer the resin, the smoother it's going to turn. When I cast these blanks, I make sure that I don't get the resin too hot in the curing process, because it creates a harder resin. Harder resin will chip. Now these are Silmar 41 blanks. It's a polyester resin. The nice thing about snakes and feather blanks and a lot of the carbon fiber blanks, they're made with a different resin because it works with that product, and it's easier to achieve a shine when you go to finish it. So you don't have to put a CA finish over a feather snake blank. You just turn them down, sand them to size, and then micro mesh them. And I use a wet the wet 9 grits, and then some Yorkshire microfine. And if I need to, I'll buff them. So I'll take this to the lathe now, and we'll chuck this up.
While John is doing that, one thing I'd like to mention, when you use that green label glue boost, particularly the first time you use it, if you're trying to do, as he points out, put it around the outside edge of your tube, that's an excellent idea. It works great. Be careful, because this stuff is really good at adhering. So if you drip it on the end or the side of your blank, you will be forever attached to that blank. Best thing to do, first of all, put something down on the table that you're working on, so if it drips on the table, it doesn't ruin your day. And secondly, be very aware of where it's going. John shows it right around that tube. That's great. It's fantastic. If it goes into the tube and runs down the tube and gets your finger, you're good. You're going to be there forever. So be careful with it the first time. It's wonderful stuff. I've learned how to use it. I love it. But boy, the first time, it's the only time I've ever gotten myself attached to a blank so hard that I had a real trouble getting it off. Now we'll let it turn.
All right, so I've got this between centers, and as you notice as I turn this, you always want to turn these blanks before you start cutting, because they're never perfectly centered. That's just something that happens when you clear cast the blank. The resin will warm up and sometimes push that tube inside one way or the other. As long as your bushings, you have resin on each side of your bushings, and there's a lot of room on this one, you never have to worry about it. But I've had people say everything has to be perfectly straight up and down. It doesn't. I could cast this at an angle from top to bottom, and it would still turn out just fine, because when you turn this down, you put your bushings on it, you're going to see there's plenty of resin around each side. But what you want to realize is when you first make this cut, it's not round. So out of round, you're gonna cut it into round, and that's what we're going to do first. And I'm going to use Mark's Easy Wood tool to do that. Thanks, Mark.
No problem.
I've got the lathe as high as it'll go. There's no need for that. We can turn it down a little bit, but it all comes down to how fast you're going to make your cut. If you're moving and cutting slow, then you're going to want the lathe a little slower. I'm going to come across, and I'm just going to cut that straight. Now I can come in here and work my edges down. One nice thing about this polyester resin, Mark and I have joked about how fast we can turn a feather blank, and usually it's under a couple of minutes, like 3-4 minutes. That's when we're really competing, but you can come across and just shear that off. I wouldn't recommend it, but I've done it in a pinch to move material to get a nice clean cut. You want to make sure you're cutting at the speed that the lathe's going to allow you to cut. So I'm going to move across this. And I get my fingers a little close in here, and I even cut uphill, and I get a nice cut. But don't force it. You can only cut as fast as the material and the tool are going to allow you. So you get into a hurry, you're going to damage your blank. The worst part about resin is it seems to stick the static and get everywhere you don't want it. Let's turn this down and look at it real quick. There we go. Oh, there it is. Now we're fine. So now that I've got it pretty much round, it's in round, not out of round, I can come in here and do what I need to. And I always bring more than one tool to turn with because a lot of people don't use carbide. Some people use just the high-speed steel. In this case, I always like to demo with this tool because I've had it for so long. But this came with the first lathe I bought. I think I bought the lathe. Well, my wife bought the lathe for me. It was about $80 at Menards, and it came with a 5-piece tool set. And I have improperly ground this to an extreme angle. And now I use it for finishing cuts because it seems to cut so well. But if you force it, you knock that burr off, and it doesn't. You have to sharpen it. So it's not uncommon for me to hone this up real quick on a work sharp when I'm making pens. But I just wanted to show you, you don't have to have top-of-the-line tools if you can't afford them. You don't have to have the latest and greatest stuff. As long as you learn to cut with it, you'll do just fine. You just need to practice it. And I'll come in here and round these corners. Now you notice sometimes I'll use my thumb to push that off. Don't get in the habit of doing that with carbide. I learned that the hard way too. And you kind of got to move your tools around to find that sweet spot to cut. Put it up there, and if you get the cut you like, go with it. If it's not cutting how you like, reorientate your tool to your material till you're getting the cut you want. I won't spend all the time cutting this down to finish size, but I will get it to a smooth surface because when I sheared across it, I left a few splinters or divots out of it.
And I'll fix it at home when you get.
I don't worry about cutting uphill as much when I'm turning acrylic. I just get the acrylic cut. So we're going to leave this a little oversized for time. You guys get the idea. If this were finished size, this is where I'd be at. So now what I would do is, as long as I'm happy with my final cut, I'm going to come in here with some 400 grit, and I'm going to turn the lathe down. And again, that's, everybody says, what's the speed? What should I do? Honestly, only you know that. You're going to know by what kind of a cut you're getting. I'm at 12 right now, a little over 12. And as you can see, the sandpaper's moving material, and it's not getting too hot. My blank surface isn't warm. If you're getting the blank hot, then you better slow your surface down, or maybe don't push in as aggressively. I always start out pushing in a little harder, but as I work across the blank a couple times, I decrease in my pressure, because that way I leave less scratches from that grit as I move to the next. So that was 400. Now I'll go to 600.
An interesting comment here, John. Kent Fleming says, when I filled the ends of the blanks with bluebird, they used solid ground pink casting plugs in each end of the tube to keep the CA out of the interior of the tube. I never thought of doing
Oh, yeah. If I get CA inside, I take a pair of scissors or a rat tail file and I just scrape it out. It'll pop right out.
But are
Those tapered plugs, they would work just fine. Yeah.
they're not gonna grab the CA or vice versa?
I mean, if they do, you're not going to leave them in that long.
Okay.
So your accelerator is going to set them up. So,
It's a cool idea.
all right. So now that I've got my 600 grit, I'm going to turn the lathe back up on high. I'm going to take some steel wool, and this is that 4/0 extra fine steel wool. And I tried to do that on purpose the other day, and I couldn't get it to, and now when I didn't want to, it happened. My point with this is, you notice all it did was pull it out of my hands. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, don't ever use steel wool. Well, this is a small turning, and if the steel wool gets pulled out of my hand, I turn it off, and I unwrap it, and I use it again. What that does, it knocks down all those scratches to prepare this for sand or for micro meshing. And I just feel like it leaves me in a better position. I don't have to try to work off them 600 grit scratches because I knocked it all down with my steel wool. And it's not aggressive.
I 4/0 steel wool all my glue boost.
Absolutely, always on my glue boost. But because this is polyester, I don't have to glue boost it,
No, right.
which is nice. Now I can go straight into a wet finish. And so I'm using the micro mesh, and I've numbered the backs of them, so I know the order, because it's not uncommon for me to drop these and then pick them up and have to figure out what grit was what. Well, if you cut them into smaller pieces, you can't always visibly see what the numbers are in the back. So I number them all from 1 to 9. I'm using a glue bottle, not a glue bottle, I'm using a water bottle. And it's just a small dropper bottle with straight water in it, because I'm just going to put a drop on my micro mesh. I'm not going to use a ton of water, but I am going to turn the lathe down. So now I'm going to knock this down to usually around my sanding speed, between 1,000 and 1,200, depending on what material it is and how I feel about it. And I'm just going to come in underneath and work back and forth with it. I'm going to build up a little bit of a slurry, but that's what it's supposed to do. It's removing that material, and it's leaving a smoother surface. So after each grit, I'm going to run through and do all 9, and I'm applying moderate pressure. I'm not going real hard with it, just enough to feel the blank and remove a little bit of material, but I'm kind of rubbing it in a circle as I go. It's not just holding it in one spot. I kind of massage it back and forth. But I would go through all 9 grits, and then when I got down to my last grit, we'll just do this up to 4. You guys know what it looks like by the 4th. But after usually grit 4, that's when I start to see that shine come through. And by turning the lathe down, you're not throwing water all over the place, but I always put a rag underneath of it to protect the lathe bed, so I'm not leaving a bunch of moisture on it. Only I forgot it, so I'm using my buffing towel at this point. So once I get it to this point, I've gone through all 9 grits. I'm then going to switch to whatever plastic polish. And in this case, I'm using the microfine Yorkshire grit. You get a lifetime supply in one container, which is great. And all I'm going to do is, I'm taking an old t-shirt, it's a nice cloth t-shirt, and I'm just going to put a little bit on it. I've even got, that's probably more than what I need. But I'm going to massage it on here, and then I'm going to kick that lathe up. And we're doing about 35. And I'm going to work this back and forth, massaging it. And then I'm going to go to a clean spot on the rag and kind of buff all that off. And obviously, after I went through all 9 grits, it would look better than this does now. But that's still a nice shine, very transparent.
And that's the clean spot on that rag?
Yeah, there's not very many of them left. And then I would take this to the buffing wheel and buff it if I need to. But usually after all 9 grits of sandpaper, of micro mesh, and then a plastic polish of some type, whether it be Novus, Plastex, I like the Yorkshire. By the time you're done, this thing is going to shine like glass. And then assemble it on our set. So if you want to go back to the...
Question, I usually wipe down the slurry after each micro mesh. Does that change anything or does it not really matter?
It doesn't really matter because you're going to build up another slurry. I guess as long as, for me, the slurry's usually on the micro mesh pad, and I will wipe the pad off so that it's not drying on the micro mesh. I just didn't want to wipe it on my buffing towel tonight, but I normally have a towel, a hand towel that I lay across the bed of the lathe. So after I use each grit, I wipe it off on the towel. And then if I'm done for the day, I'll take them upstairs and wash them off under the sink and just let them out, set them out to dry. But if I'm doing a bunch, then I'll just use them one after another until I'm done.
I've actually taken the pads, put them in a sock, and thrown them in the wash.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That works. So if
Yeah.
you do the pads, you throw them in the wash, and then I don't put them in the dryer. I'll then put them out on my dryer, and they'll dry out, and they come out perfect.
Well, and I like how you'll have a tray of water sometimes
That's
too,
what
and
I
you'll put them in there, and that way the instant water is gonna clean them off before anything has a chance to dry. My problem is I spill the water. I'll bump it, knock it over. So it just
Yeah, I have a Tupperware bowl and then a 2-liter bottle of water. Pour the water into the Tupperware bowl and then dip them in right from there.
absolutely. And if you're doing a clear resin, obviously it doesn't hurt to stop in between grits and look at it. I've grown accustomed to the pressure that I place on the blank as I'm wet sanding it, so I kind of know the results I'm going to get. But in the beginning, I would stop and I would look after each grit to make sure I didn't see deep scratches, because if there's a scratch in there that you can't remove, going further down the line with finer grits isn't going to take care of that scratch. You're going to have to back up a couple grits or maybe start over. Go back to your 600 if it's too deep, or maybe your steel wool before you move forward.
And it's not uncommon for me too, is to alternate every other grit. And I know this might not make a big difference with micro meshes, but at least in my head, I think it does. Is I will start with the first one. I'll have the lathe on and I'll go, this way. Then I'll turn the lathe off, take the next one and go across it, especially when I'm doing woods, and then go back on and then off. Acrylics, there's no grain. I don't worry about that one.
Right.
But it's a little bit of being able to take it and going with it off and going there, concealing any scratches that I would have with that grain. I'm not trying to conceal it, but that's in essence what I'm doing.
Now, if you get scratches you can't sand out and you're frustrated with it, the easiest fix would be take the ultra thin CA and put 2 layers on it. This will wick into them scratches. It will fill them and you'll have a perfectly smooth surface. But I find with the polyester blanks, I don't need to do that because the resin's harder than the finish. With urethane, like Alumilite blanks, the Alumilite Clear, Clear Slow, and any of the epoxies, that's a softer resin. So it's harder to get a really good shine unless you've got your process ironed out and you work at it. It's quicker for me to apply a glue boost finish to it and then micro mesh it up. And I think it's a more durable surface.
And I'll do that, especially on Alumilite where there's black in it.
Oh, absolutely.
Black is the hardest one to
it darkens everything.
Yeah, even if I sanded it pure and stuff, when I go and I put that, I will see little micro scratches in it.
Yep.
Just that black is so hard to do with Alumilite. I will go with a glue boost finish on top of any of the black parts.
If
So,
you're not
John-
sure what you want, Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
If we could, there's one we promised to come back to. So before I forget, you used blue Loctite early on. Do you have a specific one you use, or is it any blue?
I use Loctite just because that's what my local Ace Hardware
The question
has.
came up, is it the 242?
Do you know what the number is? Is it?
I don't know what the number is offhand, but it's the blue Loctite.
Blue Loctite.
Yeah. I don't know how many numbers are out there, but I know there's red and I know there's blue, and the red is more permanent, so I wouldn't use red. By using the blue, it allows you to remove those pieces with a little bit of pressure if you need to. It's not permanent, but
It's not my permanent.
yeah, it just holds everything through normal use. But you can knock them apart if you need to.
All right. Are we at a good breaking point here?
We definitely are.
I think you've got a gold kit there.
I believe we do right here.
All right, giveaway number 3, and I think it's probably gonna be the last one for the night, but let's go with giveaway number 3 being the gold kit, and just type gold.
See, and I'm saying gold. I want to win one of these.
I love how all of a sudden, boom, you see like 40 of them just pop up all at once. That's awesome.
What's funny is this time I goofed. I didn't put in my type gold for the giveaway first, and I had to catch it as it's running by to click on it to pop it up.
Nice.
35. Keep going.
So as those are coming in, we were talking about the acrylics. One thing I did, and I encourage everybody every time we talk about this to do that, is when you're turning down an acrylic blank, if you're not sure, before you get it to finish size, put some glue boost on half of the blank, and then just do a quick micro mesh on it and compare both sides. You're going to see if there's any difference in color that you like. And for me, I've found it, especially like Mark said, on the blacks and the darker colors, the colors seem to pop more. It's a very bold, very obvious, noticeable. It's almost like a picture overexposed without it, right? It's kind of washed out, but all of a sudden you put that glue on there and it just brings everything in check.
If I can amplify on that point, that's a great point. It's one of the things I teach all the time when I'm doing it, especially if you're a beginning pen turner and you're actually putting any kind of CA finish, even on wood. I will tell you, round the blank down, leave it 1/8 of an inch proud of the bushings.
Yep.
Put a finish on it, cut it off. Put a finish on it, cut it off. Put a finish on it, cut it off. The last thing you want to do is get it down perfect, get it down to the bushing, and that's the first time you're going to try a CA finish on it.
Yep.
Put it on when you get it round. You can get 5 or 6 practice on there, cut it off, on it, cut it off before you even have to worry about it.
Yep.
Worst case scenario is your third one was perfect. Your fourth one, when you get it down to the bushing, isn't. But you know what? It's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and it doesn't take long to really figure out how to work that glue.
No.
Each bottle, the 3 that we use in the fill and finish, they all have different consistencies and they all work for specific reasons. And you may not always need all 3 on one pen, but you're going to learn real quick when you need each of them because they each have their own individual uses.
Yeah. I've been a pen maker 30 years. I started doing glue boost in 2019, I think. And I don't look back. I think it's just the easiest finish that's out there. That's one of the reasons I'd picked it up in the line, I think.
Jess, I don't only dry sand glue boost finishes. I actually wet sand, even on wood.
Yeah.
But the trick is seal those end grains. As long as you seal the end grain, once you put your coat on top, you're safe to wet sand it. Just don't saturate it. Don't soak it, right? Just use a couple drops. You can sand that, and your moisture is not going to wick in because the end grain is sealed now. It's stabilized, and it's not going to get in. But that's where this ultra thin comes in handy. That's really the stuff to use.
I will dry sand up to 400 because that's usually the most dangerous grit that I'm going to expose.
I'll actually dry to 6.
Okay. But I'll dry sand to that. But with the micro meshes, I'll wet sand.
Yep.
Because I don't think that I can do even if I made a mistake, I'm not going to go into a damage.
Yes.
If I'm doing 400, it's still right there. It's still right on that line. So I'll dry sand to 400 or 600. And then with the micro meshes, that's when I'll definitely wet sand a glue boost sand.
And I will use Yorkshire the microfine on a CA finish. It works phenomenal.
Exactly.
So
All right. So I've got our winners, and I say winners because Dawn over my shoulder said, hey, we promised them 4. We're going to give away 4. So winner
Awesome.
number 3 is Carolina C.
Carolina SEE.
SEE. So there's number, oops, come on, pop it up. There's winner number 3,
all right.
followed by, I'm typing it in as I talk here. So number 4.
This last
Mark Dreyer. It's Mark Dreyer.
What color was that one, Mark? John?
This one is looks like antique. Sorry, I have it on the inside. Antique brass with a stabilized blue blank.
And that is Rich Vasquez. Hopefully I'm not slaughtering that.
That's right. That's stuck one down.
Yep.
Oh, here I can.
Bazques.
Easy.
Awesome.
There we go. 4 free pen and kit
Perfect.
combos going out tonight.
Thanks, Dean. And congrats to all the winners tonight.
Oh, everybody's a winner. Everybody's a winner.
Well, I
Hey.
think
And Dean, you want to open it up to anybody who has any questions or comments or, any comments about, obviously we changed formats. Ed, you want to jump in?
I-
We changed formats. We went from Zoom to YouTube. Any comments on that?
I think you just did, but yes, anybody in chat, feel free to pop up anything else. Here, I'll put that in. Richard's asking, how do I claim? Email winners. Email sales at
yep.
The
So
winners,
type it in
just
how they go.
email sales at exoticblanks.com. If we don't have your information, Dawn will need your mailing address, etc. If you're a customer already or you've placed an order with the specials, which are still going on for about another 2 hours tonight, for the free blanks, she'll drop them off with that order.
-7. Ah,
Ouch. So I woke up the other morning and Alexa told me it was -7 outside. I dropped the youngest off at school and came back home and stayed upstairs. So I feel your pain.
Can't believe how many times you misspelled my name.
I popped that one up.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad everybody liked the YouTube format. Dick, we appreciate your idea. Thank you for helping us, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
The other ad I will
Hopefully
put
we'll
in is I will say these will continue to play up. We are going to work it so that you'll be able to rewatch it to catch the stuff because I know a lot's been talked, even though it went a couple of hours. And look for some more things. Now that we're on YouTube, we're going to be trying some other new things that we've never done before.
yeah, I mean, the history of this, we've been over 2 years of doing this, right?
Just about.
Yeah, right around 2 years of doing this. If you're new here, we've got about 2 years of doing this. And one of the things we can tell you is we're always looking for topics.
Yeah, we're always open for ideas. So anything you guys want to email Ed at that address, sales at Exotic Blanks. Ed and Dawn are welcome to hear you guys and your ideas. We're always looking for any topics.
And it's always great to talk to you at the Midwest Pen Turners Gathering, MidwestPenTurnersGathering.com.
And for you guys that know, for all you guys that have been, people that have been to the MPG, you know that it's social hour. We hang out in the lobby and we do just as much, just talking and hanging out. And it's great to meet everybody. So if you've never been to one, give it some thought. It's a lot of fun. It's not just about the demos or seeing all the vendors and meeting them in person and being able to leave with great prizes and your purchases, but it's just about hanging out and talking and sharing ideas. And we've made a lot of friends that way. So.
And if you want to meet Chris and Christy from Easy Wood Turning Tools, they'll be there. If you want to meet Ed and Don, they'll be there. Dean will be there.
If you want to see Dawn, you've got to come to the MPG. So absolutely. It's a lot of fun.
It's all about the pizza.
Yes. And I will just tell you this. Last year we had a little issue with the pizza. It's now under our control. And we will have more than enough pizza for people to be enjoying that one.
Yeah, and we're always fine-tuning the show, right?
We
We're looking
always
for
are.
feedback, and what you guys, your responses to our evaluations, they don't go unheard, right? We read every one of them. We sit down, the three of us. Well, I should say more than that because Dawn's always included and Donna's always included, and it's just a great team. You know, we take all that to heart because we want to give you guys a better experience.
I do know how to talk. The problem is I don't have an earphone, or we have some issues with that. So it's not that I'm trying to ignore everybody. Thank you very much for coming, but I can't hear what's going on. So I'm letting these two guys handle it, which they're doing brilliantly.
How come he didn't get dirty?
How come he didn't get dirty? Me neither. Ha ha.
They can close it, or Dean can close it, I imagine.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right.
Okay. So, Robert, one real quick thing. Couple things Robert points out. Don't forget to bring a pen for the contest. If you signed up next week, we're going to be sending out an email to everybody who's ever been there, and we're going to talk about some of that kind of stuff. Also, it's a great opportunity to bring a pen for the troops. We get the pens. Last year, we donated about 350 pens. That gets donated for our troops.
And we also, in the evenings, we'll have open late time where we'll be there talking about finishes. So if somebody's never tried Glue Boost and you want to lay your hands on it and give it a shot, we've always got something set up where you guys can try this product. So
34th wedding anniversary, I see. Hey, we have just celebrated my 34th or 35th. Don't tell her I said I was off by a year. We just celebrated our 35th a couple months ago. So congratulations.
All right.
Congratulations, Larry, and tell Maureen we said hi.
I always say it seems like only 10 minutes underwater, of course, without any breathing apparatus. But
The MPG?
yeah, no,
Oh.
marriage.
Oh, marriage.
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 That's good right
What?
there.
So yeah, the Pentra Troops thing, it's been something that we have done for years. We've donated well over 1,000 pens.
And Exotic Blanks is active in the one in Milwaukee in addition. So yeah, we're very big on military. This past year, the guy who ran it in Milwaukee has had some physical problems, so they haven't had as many, but we did over 1,000 there every year for 4 years, and we continue to give them some and Chicago some. And so yeah, it's a big thing for us. So thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Now I'll shut up.
Well, I was just gonna say, for anyone coming to the MPG, just prepared to be a little sleep deprived that weekend also, because it's not uncommon for us to hang out in the lobby after the event's over. We go to dinner or whatever. We just sit in the lobby, and they've got big tables. We can just gather around and talk till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So Mark and I we're happy to get 6 hours of sleep the whole weekend, and it's a rough drive home, but it's memorable. So hope to see all you guys there.
Again, keep the ideas flowing. Like I said, we've got a lot more options coming now that we've got YouTube. Throw the ideas at us. Send an email to sales@exoticblanks.com and we'll see what we can do next.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you all.
night.